pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I'm going to read the Leominster School Committee statement. The committee represents the needs of all Leominster Public School students who place their interests above all others. We will exercise leadership, adhere to our protocols, and base our decision on a recent assessment of all available information. We will advocate for each of our schools and support high-quality public education in Leominster. All right, we'll open it up to public comment. Do we have anyone who signed up?
We have two that are virtual, but I didn't know if anybody was here first.
Is there anybody in person that would like to speak?
Virtual, we have Norma Quinones. Can you unmute yourself and state your name and address?
Doesn't look like she's on.
The next one is Nikki Turpin. Can you unmute and state your name and address, please?
Hi, I'm Nikki Turpin. I'm on Jocelyn Street in Leominster. I just wanted to quickly chat about, excuse me, the idea that if we are now past mask, which was obviously a state mandate that was removed and had only and everything to do with the state, that if we are discussing the idea of kids coming first, which was a platform that many people sitting on the school committee ran on, that we start discussing mental wellness for our students and currently how we are looking at a community of human beings who between the ages of 10 and 24, there is an increase in ideation with suicide and death by suicide, up 26% since the pandemic happened. And so if those conversations are not first and foremost coming out of everyone's mouth right now, as someone sitting on a school committee, we are not doing justly what we said we are doing as parents, as school committee members, as community members in general, human beings that, you know, are saying that we care. We are watching our LGBTQI+ community and female identifying human beings suffer with a higher rate of about 40% in suicide ideation. So those numbers are pretty scary. And so as we sit here and want to have conversations about masks, we are really missing out on an opportunity to discuss mental wellness and what we need to do to provide that for all of our students as we sit here and talk about being here for all of our students. That's what that means right now, especially as they're starting to navigate social emotional situations that they have not been in before because of living through a pandemic, because we're not quite out of that yet, even though we are kind of trying to push through that. And so how do we support every single school student, teacher, counselor, as we look at what will probably be an increase in ideation with suicide, attempted suicide, and possibly death by suicide. Thank you.
If anybody else is on Zoom and would like to speak, can you unmute yourself and state your name and address? Would anybody else on Zoom like to speak?
Third time, would anybody else speak in here, in the room or over Zoom? All right. All right, move on to communications.
So we're closing that portion.
Yes, we're closing public comment. Thank you. Okay, communications?
There are no communications this evening.
Okay. Superintendent report?
Sure. Just for anybody that may have not read my Sunday email, I know parents are starting to skip right by those. There are 5 things I'd like to highlight. The first one speaks to what our first presenter said. PPAL, which is a Parent Professional Advocacy League. It's a statewide grassroots family organization that advocates for improved access to mental health services for children, youth, and their families. PPAL's goals are to support families, nurture family leaders, and work for systems of change. There's a meeting on March 16th at 6:30. It's virtual, and the link is on our website should anybody choose to take a peek and participate. The next thing is CPAC, our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, has put out a March calendar March is a very long month. So if any parent is looking for ideas, groups, just quick activities to do with their children, the resources that are composed on this one calendar are plentiful. We also have on March 9th, this has been an annual event. This is supported by the Black Heritage Club. It is the Black Excellence Gala, hosted by these students and Ms. Tracy Perkins, who is our facilitator. It is March 9th from 6 to 8 in the LHS auditorium. It's really nice to have this program back. It's a wonderful few hours if anyone can attend. We would really appreciate it. Also, the World Language Department here at Leominster High wanted to just share that this entire week they will be celebrating world language with a theme of Celebrate Humanity Through Language. They are holding an annual poster contest, and all students are eligible, all LHS students are eligible to submit a poster, and participants receive a certificate for participation as well as a photo op for their website. The winner will receive a $50 gift card, and so they're hoping for large participation. They also have 2 virtual meetings, one with the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Department of Labor, and later in the week, they're holding another virtual meeting with His Excellency Jay Santos at Cape Verde Ministry of Communities. So the students are having a wonderful experience there. And last but not least, I know that not only I'm saying it, but the building principals, right now, attendance. We have a great opportunity, a healthy opportunity right now with better weather coming. We need our students in school as much as possible and staff. Everybody sort of turned the corner over the health crisis, and every day is chock full. So if we could have attendance on the rise, I know some of our schools have incentives, little competitions going just to end this year on a high note. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Etude presentation.
Wonderful. Eileen, are you on?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Oh, there you are. Now we can see you really well.
Oh, hi. Am I really big on your screen?
Really excited to hear what you have to say.
All right, let me share my screen. All right. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me come to your meeting today. I wanted to give you an update on where we are with strategic planning. I'll do an introduction for myself too. So I've been, Paula, I don't know how many meetings I've come, like probably 2, I think, is that right? 2 school committee meetings?
2, yes.
Okay, 1 to kick off the work and 1 to give you an update. Oh, that's right, after the org diagnostics. So I've been working with the strategic planning team, and I'll show you who the steerco is, for the last 6 to 7 months, if you can believe it. And we've put together a ton of work, tons of partnership, and are really excited to share the highlights of our plan today. And so before I dig into that, wanted to share some updates that my colleague Dana from Etude, Dana Lehman, has been working on as well. So I don't know if y'all recall, but when I first met with you in September and October to talk about the project, I explained how we have 2 projects at the same time. The strategic planning was happening, and at the same time, Dana was really working with the instructional team to make changes in real time, like not waiting until the strategic planning was done in order to make real improvements in the classroom. So I wanted to give you a high-level summary of the work that she's been doing with the team at Leominster. So in the fall, Etude completed 50 walkthroughs, so observations across 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school, and 3 high school programs. I think the biggest takeaway, which I know was a surprise to many of us, was that in terms of grade level rigor, 18% of classrooms met the bar for grade level rigor. So I think that's a really big eye opener for us, but also really provided a lot of focus for the team on what we needed to do to accomplish immediately. And so through several professional development sessions, there were 3 in the fall. There's going to be 3 in the spring. There was 1 in January, 1 tomorrow, and 1 in April. Dana has been laser focusing on rigor and understanding how to create that that bar, the instructional expertise with leaders so that they can share that with teachers. And actually, when Dana conducted the January walkthroughs, we already saw an improvement with 35% of the classrooms meeting the bar for grade level rigor. So just wanted to share, a little bit of celebration there. I know there's a lot of hard work left to do, but I think this is like a really incredible opportunity that that Attuned had with Leominster, was to be able to do these real-time improvements while we were working on the strategic plan. I'm gonna check my chat really quick. Oh, how is rigor measured? Great question, Nikki. Paula, may I answer that right now? Okay, so so Nikki, rigor is defined as with the tier 1 materials, which are in place, I believe, with most of all math and ELA, well, most subjects and grades across Leominster. Rigor is defined as following the curriculum, making sure the students are doing most of the heavy thinking and lifting versus the teachers doing that. So making sure there's an appropriate balance between the teacher giving instruction and also independent practice for students to be able to absorb that on their own. So I'll keep going. Okay, so now I wanted to jump into the strategic planning portion. So you've seen this slide, I think, a couple of times. And I think when I first met with you, the box was on phase 1, if you can believe it. So we have progressed all the way to our last phase of the project, which is really exciting. And so wanted to share with you a high-level summary of all the work we've done to date. So first, I wanted to take a pause and a shout out to these 12 amazing individuals, starting at the top with Superintendent Deacon. Thank you so much for allowing us to partner with you in this amazing process. So much hard work. To give you an idea, we met a lot. I'd say every 2 to 3 weeks for at least 2 to 3 hours. In between each meeting, there was also tons of work that the weekly planning team did. So that was with Laureen, Michelle, Jillian, and Renee. And there were so many requests for members of the SteerCo and beyond, right? And so just want to, highlight for you all the amazing work that happened, but it was with input from stakeholders from throughout the district. So if you see any one of these SteerCo members, just give them a thank you for all their hard work, including Brandon, who is sitting there today. So I think we saw this last time. We started with a vision of what we wanted to accomplish. So after our org diagnostic and our strengths and gaps, we really set out to understand and visualize where we wanted to be in 5 years. And so you'll see here on the top are what we call mission level outcomes. And those are where we want to be in terms of graduates' capabilities, student academic outcomes, student SEL outcomes, and equity. And on the bottom are inputs and experiences. And so those are things that require more of the experience, whereas the one on the top, the mission level, we can actually measure the outputs. So on the bottom, we have the student academic experience, the student culture experience, the family experience, staff experience, and operations and finance. And I'll say throughout the process, after we defined these aspirations, everything else fell into place. After the aspirations, we were able to define our priorities and go further and further until we had action steps detailed for each of our initiatives. So let me talk you through what came next after this. So after our aspirations, which are our big 5-year visionary, aspirations of where we want to be, came our priorities. I like to look at this as like our rallying cries and our big chunks of work that we need to focus on. And so number 1, implement rigorous, aligned, and culturally relevant curricular material and assessments for all students. Number 2, promote content and instructional expertise through training, coaching, unit and lesson plan internalization, student work, and data analysis. The third one centers around recruiting and retaining a diverse and talented team through equitable hiring, evaluation, promotion, distributed leadership, and pipeline practices. The fourth, implement tiered academic and SEL supports to meet students' specialized needs. The fifth, develop and inspire stakeholders with a vision, mission, and graduate aims focused on equity and high expectations. And lastly, we wanted to build and maintain a culturally inclusive, joyful, engaging, and safe student culture. I'm reading these verbatim because these are so important and I didn't want to paraphrase these. Like we worked really hard over several weeks to make sure that we captured the priorities in a way that were meaningful to Leominster stakeholders and that would truly inspire us and focus our work over the next 5 years. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we had our aspirations, our priorities, then we got even narrower with, with our initiatives. And so initiatives are our big buckets of work. And this is when things start to get really tangible. After initiatives, we can go down to deliverables and action steps, and each person that is in charge of each of these initiatives knows exactly what they need to do. But with these initiatives, I wanted to talk you through some of the big ones. These are the ones that are launching in year one. And so under priority one, which is all about curriculum, you'll see that the team is working super hard to get several curricula in place. So you'll see the launch of grades 9 and 10 math next year, 6 to 10 ELA. We will be aligning K-5 social studies and science with the Wonders curriculum. And finally, we'll launch science grades 6 to 8 all next year. These are actually already things, that the team have been working hard on, but to codify it and put it in one place, I thought was really powerful to show that we have the initiatives to back up the priorities and thus to achieve our aspirations. Priority 2, this is all about the PD, the professional support that we're providing to our teachers and staff. And so you'll see the initiatives that we have here are that school leaders will implement data-driven instruction and student work analysis systems to develop teacher capacity to respond effectively to evidence of student understanding. And then the central office PD committee will continue to build instructional expertise. So that last initiative there's a lot of professional development that has to go into making sure that you're implementing your curricula to fidelity. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a big bucket of work and initiative, actually, and this initiative is in all 5 years, to make sure that we have that PD and support for our teachers and staff. Priority 3 is all about a great team. And this priority really resonated. We also had focus groups with students, staff members, and family members. And this one really resonated as one of the top priorities that we need in order to really move us forward in the next 5 years. And so in year one, you'll see that we'll be working on first, strengthening partnerships to increase the quality and diversity of applicants. You'll see next that the central office leaders are going to work to standardize and redesign HR, selection, hiring, and many other important processes. And lastly, under priority 3, our central office leaders will implement a program to improve the experiences of educators of color. I'll move on to priority 4. We saw that these years have not been easy for many of us, and especially not for students and their social emotional health and well-being. And so we wanted to make sure that we had several buckets of work that focus on students and their SEL support. So first, central office leaders will increase the number of staffing in order to provide more students with high quality mental health support. You'll also see that we are working to ensure effective implementation and a clear continuum between buildings and regarding inclusive practices. And lastly, that we'll build and strengthen meaningful after-school partnerships at the elementary and middle school levels so that students can receive more SEL support. All right, and on the last 2 priorities, so priority 5, excuse me, let me move some, I can't read my screen. Priority 5 is to develop and inspire stakeholders with a vision, mission, and graduate aims focused on equity and high expectations. The first initiative under this is to use a scorecard of meeting structures to monitor implementation and outcomes. And actually, y'all are continuing your work with Attuned, who will be helping you do this through an online system to make sure that we are meeting the milestones and metrics that we set out to accomplish. And then the second one is that leaders develop a system-wide mission to foster a diverse, equitable, and inclusive community for adults and students so they're aligned mindsets. And lastly, student joy is our priority. And so the initiatives that we have for this priority is schools will train and coach leaders to hold students to district behavioral and academic expectations. And lastly, central office leaders will redesign and implement discipline practices to develop school leader and teacher capacity to respond consistently and equitably to student behavior. This is a ton of work and it's really impressive. It's, again, I would say like half of these things, I feel like the team was already undergoing or they will be in the process of designing. And then I think there's 7 of them that are brand new in year 1, but just really an impressive amount of work from the team to identify these priorities and then initiatives to really have a set plan and know exactly where everyone what needs to go and what everyone needs to do in the next year. Okay, so I think that is it for my presentation. Paula, could you tell me how the best way would be to handle questions?
Does anybody have questions for Eileen? I will be giving a formal presentation of the complete strategic plan. We're talking Mayish. The strategic plan is the piece to all of the puzzle. Tonight, when you hear our principals kick off their budgeting, everything is tying back to that strategic plan. Everything has to align. We have communicated this over and over again. Each one of our members have sat and I'm telling you, I love you, Eileen. Brutal. Hundreds of hours have gone into diagnosing Leominster Public Schools, where we're at or where we want to be. And the team that she showed you before has worked tirelessly. And even Brandon now reacts when he sees an Eileen email, gives him a shiver. So our principals know this, our teachers know this, our PD, everything is tightly linked together. All of our resources we have talked about, where we're going to align. So actually, I think at this point, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I'd really like for you to listen to the next set of presentations and how it ties back to this, so that when I come back around at the end of the year, it's really crystal clear where we want to be headed for the next 5 years. So are there any outstanding questions, Ronnie?
The question I have is either you can answer it or Eileen can answer it. Oh.
Yeah.
When you're talking about changing approaches and whatnot, either you or Eileen, are you going to show us what things have to be changed, how it's going to change, and what happened to those kids that were under the influence of those things that got changed? How is it going to affect their grades? Can it affect their grades? Can you go back and help them to get their grades better?
So one of the best things with Ronnie, which you always love, are numbers. We have.
It's not I like numbers. It's just that
it just makes sense.
It's just that, like let's say this book right here. I'm reading this book. Yes, it's changing me a little bit.
Yeah.
But before I read the book, there was nothing there.
So we have measures on every one of these initiatives. We have a history, we have a trajectory, and as Eileen said, we have an accountability system that is demanding we stay on pace. So we have quantified and qualified each one of these goals moving forward. We have beaten this thing to death. We have a magical statistician that has worked with us to tell us what is realistic and where we could be in 5 years. And we've sent him back to the drawing board several times, and we have a consensus now of what we know we can accomplish. And it's actually really exciting. The other day we were setting goals higher for ourselves than he was setting them, because
is 5 years a justifiable goal?
Yes.
Because if you're shooting for 5 years, what happened in the interim?
Everything's a building block, right? Everything builds upon one another. We're measuring it all the way through. And we also have the chance to adapt along the way. All of a sudden in year 2, if everything is accomplished, and you'll see in the plan at the end, there are measures that we might have to go back and say, we're doing better than we thought. So let's go and adjust that and set our goal even higher. That's the goal, is to beat ourselves even at this. This is a nice little game for us. We want to do better than what we even set forth to do.
And you're going to show the
yes,
not the
trajectory.
What's the word I'm looking for? The projections.
Yes. Yes.
The projections before this all started, the projections after you started, and the projections whether it's
we've
1 year, 2 year, 3 year.
Study, and then we have a projection for 5 years. So we've had to look back to go forward. And we've taken everything into account. We've even taken the last 2 years, even though it's been a little wonky, it's important, right? It had impact. So all that information is in there.
All right.
And
okay.
it's solid.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Anyone else have a question? Myself or Irene?
This is probably a quick one. So with one of the goals being increasing equality and equity of applicants, and as we're facing a teacher shortage everywhere, is that something that you're able to get feedback on, or
Yes.
expanding the pool or other options?
Right, so right now, what Eileen presented was very high level.
Right.
Underneath that is a whole menu of steps and initiatives, all the work that needs to be done to get us there. So yes. Great. Anyone else?
I think I'll save my questions till the end. like
Okay,
you
great.
mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you so much, Eileen. I know.
Thanks. Thanks so much. And I guess you won't be getting that many emails from me anymore. So that's good news. But I wanted to thank you and Brandon and the rest of the school committee and everyone that was able to be on this call. Just thank you so much for your caring so deeply about your students, and hope to one day get to visit Leominster and get to meet you all in person. Thanks again.
We'll come to New Orleans anytime.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eileen.
Thanks, Eileen.
Thank you.
All right. We're on to the elementary budget presentation. Who's kicking it off?
We're all 5 of them. We have early childhood and our 4 elementary. We talked about breaking them up, but truly, these 5 work together every day, all day.
Do it as a group.
Yeah, so they're doing it as a group.
Awesome.
And so we have worked closely with the cabinet members in each one of the departments. This year, knowing where we're at financially, and 2 thumbs up with that. And we have the strategic plan. We made sure that members sat down with a cabinet member. Mel worked one-on-one with each person, making sure that their requests were affordable and did they make sense. So we've gone back and forth. So it felt really good to bring all 5 of them together, because this is how they work as a team. Sometimes when we have our principals meetings, we have them on levels, and we work with just the elementary, and then we work with middle and high. But this group talk to each other behind the scenes all the time. They have to. Our kids are moving between buildings. So I'm going to turn it over to the Fab 5. Right? Who's kicking us off? Jeffrey?
Hi, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jeff Sullivan, principal over at Fallbrook Elementary. I think I know most of you. I'm excited to share a little bit about Fallbrook tonight. I would like to start by thanking the Massachusetts School Building Authority, as well as the school committee, Mayor Mazzarella, my staff, and particularly Chris Silverman, Butch Nato, and Paula, of course, for supporting us as we enter into the eligibility stage, the first stage of exploring, fingers crossed, a new school. And I know Chris sent an email this morning. We finished the first task.
We're going for a gold star.
So thank you for that. You guys have a bunch of information in your packet, some demographic stuff, but I'm going to speak tonight to 2 of the goals that we have listed there. One of them is a school improvement goal, and that is school. So our first, and I believe it's in there, it's bulleted, but I'm going to speak a little bit different to that. So this first goal addresses our commitment to actively engaging our students, our families, while reestablishing and furthering our resources within the community. Specifically, we're going to work with families to improve attendance. COVID has affected attendance greatly. At this point, 25% of our students are chronically absent. And that's for a variety of reasons, but much of that is COVID related. So through our ongoing conversations with families and support of our attendance initiative program, we want to get back to some sense of normalcy with attendance, and follow it as well. And we have some things in place for that a little more specifically. Through those same sort of avenues, we are going to address and support our families. And I call it COVID-related anxiety. It's not a literal thing, but as we talked about, the social and emotional needs of our students has really honestly been affected by COVID. Within the classroom, with targeted professional development and teacher observation feedback, we're going to focus on standards-aligned instruction, coupled with the rigorous facilitation of lessons, all to improve our student engagement. Additionally, we want to promote a culture that values and encourages effective effort and growth mindset over in a So we have one particular program we have at the school that's been successful, and some of us have had direct work with this, is our Falcon phone call. So it's really, I have the pleasure of calling families each week. We do it weekly, fifth grade, 1 week, first grade, and so forth, and tell them and highlight their child's effective effort. So it's their effort, their attitude, their perseverance, all those things, rather than just their innate ability in school. So it's been very successful. I've got a lot of positive feedback, and we're really promoting these things that those students do. Our second goal is a data goal, and it really addresses our desire to drive instruction using data to ensure that every student in our school has opportunities to be included, regardless of special education status or L status, or really any factor that might impact a student's learning. We're consistently reflecting at Fallbrook, whether it's through our grade level teams, our assessment team, our vertical teams. We're always looking to analyze data with a specific goal of using best practices supported by district provided curriculum to inform instruction. And we hold our teachers at Fallbrook in a very high esteem, knowing that their level of expectation combined with a rigorous facilitation of grade level content is essential to improving our academic achievement. So I just spoke about a lot of things. A lot of it was aligned with what we heard before and what Paula mentioned. So I know we're going to speak and then we'll take questions at the end. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about anything that I said or really anything about all of it. So thank you.
Who's next? Colin? Oh, you guys sat and wanted to jump. We did.
Oh,
Can I tell you?
Wow, you guys are organized.
Elementary knows how to fall. We can line up, we can walk down the hall. I know, it all falls apart later on, but elementary.
It's about to fall apart now because I was going to say everything Jeff just said. No. I do line up a lot. I know I don't have the detail that Jeff provided to you, but if you look in the packet, 2 school-based improvement goals that we're looking at. The first one is we want to foster and strengthen a sense of belonging for all subgroups as we continue to create a more inclusive school community. And the second one that we're looking at is we will implement and continue to implement high-quality curriculum products as we promote and strengthen instruction and culture of achievement. So in thinking about like the first one, we are thinking of things like attendance and everything that Jeff was talking about when we're trying to figure out how we get everyone to kind of settle in and be part of our culture. The second one, we're looking at monitoring student engagement and just providing that high quality instruction and making sure that we're using products with fidelity and integrity. Now, how are we going to do that? Or what are our thoughts of how we're going to try to do these things? Right now, we currently have 156 L students and have identified additional students coming from Francis Drake and Fifth Street for next year. In alignment with Goal 1, we're going to request 1 additional L teacher. We currently have 3. We're also seeking special education help. Based on our projected numbers, we have 109 students that are projected for next year. We currently have 102 who receive either resource or inclusion support. We are requesting 2 additional special education teachers as we continue to strengthen instruction in our inclusive practices. So that lines up with our first goal there, including all of our subjects. Our second one, to enhance excellent instruction, we will focus professional development for all staff on inclusive practices and co-teaching. We will continue to partner with our curriculum team as well as outside consultants as we increase opportunities for inclusive practices. So we're in our budget, we put a lot of money in towards professional development so that we can make this happen. We also have an amazing curriculum team downtown that can help us with this. When we're looking at anything physical for our site, we definitely want to look at our gym and kind of redoing the gym and revamping some of the things that are in our gym and bringing it into a more modern time. So that's the floor, repainting it, working on the bleachers. Going.
Hello everyone, my name is Andres Vera, the principal for Francis Drake School. So nice to meet you all, some new faces. I hope I have a chance to speak with you later in the year. Feel free to come by visit anytime. Believe me, a couple of you just came by. And so welcome, our doors are open.
Andres, may I ask, how many years have you been principal?
This is my 10th.
10th as principal. Colleen?
A lot. I have 2 more. Jeffrey?
20 years as the superintendent?
5. Patty? This is my second as principal, but you are assistant.
Well, assistant for 7.
Yes. And Margaret?
4 as a principal and previous assistant and 31 years in the school system.
So we have veterans. I'm sorry,
Oh, no.
I just want, you guys are a staple when we talk about elementary education.
Well, thank you. So similar to what Jeff and Colleen spoke about, and my other partners in crime will in a minute, I wanted to just highlight a couple of areas of focus for next year. First one being that sense of belonging, fostering a sense of belonging. Colleen spoke to that a little bit. I'd like to say a couple of things about that. This has always, especially at the elementary level, all levels, but I feel especially at the elementary level, sense of belonging is a must. And after this pandemic, doing this number on us, more than ever now. Students know their faults, families know their faults for everything that they've gone through. Disconnections, right? Disconnected from the social world. We have students that come to us, that coming to us with not much background on how to play together, right? So we want to make sure the students feel connected, loved, accepted, happy to be at school. That when mom and dad says, we're gonna stay home today because A, B, or C, they're like, no. I want to go to my school. I miss my friends. I love being at school. That's that sense of belonging that I'm referring to, right? So we need to continue to build that sense of community within the school. The students are the first ones to say out of home, no, I'm going to school. There's a variety of ways of doing that. I mentioned a couple just to kind of provide you with some background that we have already been working on. At the beginning of this year, of this past year, knowing that this is going to be a long-term goal. This is not just a one and done, right? We knew that this was going to be a thing that we need to pay attention to. How connected are the students feeling to school? So one of the things that we started to do is to, we put out a survey to students. Tell us how you feel. We made it very, age appropriate, and we got a ton of information from that. And they were honest, amazingly honest. So that data is now gonna help us, has already been put in place to start addressing that need. One of the things that we have done is daily check-ins. I check with 2 students a day. Religiously, they come to me. We talk about whatever they want to talk about, what they do in the weekend, or we play a game. But now they know about me more than probably most adults in the building know about it, right? So it's that making that connection. So every adult does that. Wow, wonderful. So we'll measure that again, data driven. We'll measure that again at the end of each year to see where we're at. Sometimes we might graduate students who feeling they were not feeling so well, and now they're like, hey, I'm good. I'm fantastic. So, okay, who else can I take on now? So we have a number of adults in the building that are willing to do that. So that's just one quick example of what I'm talking about when I'm talking, developing that sense of belonging. Number 2, we're talking about continuous monitoring of student understanding. There is nothing more important in terms of instruction to have real-time data on how students are doing. Okay, so that if I turn to any of my teachers, I can say, hey, how is Johnny doing? I saw him yesterday. And they can turn and say, well, let me tell you about it. Yesterday we did this formative assessment and we, or whatever observation they done. And this is where he was 2 weeks ago, and this is where he was yesterday. Real-time data, right? So we want to make sure that the teachers are well-trained, well-versed, and supported, understanding how to continuously monitor student understanding. That's going to continue to be a focus. We have something that is called common planning time. And this now moving into the academic instruction, although all of it is overlapping everywhere. The academic instructional focus enhance common planning time. It's a block of time that teachers have every day, and it's a rotating block during which they take the time to just sort of problem solve, right? We can utilize that time even better. So we want to put a focus on that. I'm excited about the curriculum content specialists in the district. they will be hearing from me for sure that I've already been in the building. And so to help us enhance that flow, right? Whether it's data analysis, providing some support in terms of training during that block of time. So it's every day, and we can provide that support with their help for our teachers to be able to use that to the best way possible. And then last is that, again, that capacity to be able to analyze student data on an ongoing basis. We know what we do, but we need to take advantage of the resources available, right? So we'll continue to do that as well. And under the physical improvements, and I'm going through it quickly, but I don't know if I'm going too fast. Under the physical improvements, I am asking for support to improve our playground area in the back. Talk about sense of belonging. One of the most important pieces or parts of the day is recess. I mean, that is when I can let go, I can run, I can play with my friends. I'm not under the academic gun, right? So I won't take much of your time, but we need love. There is a lot of love needed for our playground. I have some visuals that can depict that. You can come and see yourself. I can pass this around. But we want to make sure that our playground is a place that they feel, wow, I enjoy being here, right? So otherwise, we end up with having students just, I don't know, make up their own things and push each other, because now the kids they do is just play tag in that bare black top, right? So we want to improve that and asking for some support to start that process. Come by anytime, visit. I would love to talk to you, any of you, and show you around. But that is under the physical improvement. That's one area that we're going to focus on. Again, to continue to have that I want a big school. And when I want a big school and I'm present, I'm not absent, then we're going to also see academic growth.
Hi, I'm Patty King, the principal at Johnny Appleseed School. I also have Devin Tapley, which is the assistant principal. Although I was at Johnny Appleseed School previously as an assistant principal, we both started in these positions in the summer of 2020. So it is really nice to be able to meet you face to face. I'm excited about that. So our goals for Johnny Appleseed School, one of them again, is to work on attendance. I want to take a two-tier approach to that. I want to be able to educate parents on the importance of their children being at school. And I'd also like to be able to take a look at data that we have and identify our chronically absent children, not due to COVID. And then be able to work with their parents. We've got a top-notch guidance department, and they are wonderful working parents to encourage the children to get into school. And again, we would have initiatives and things like that. Another one of our goals is to improve student engagement while working on grade level curriculum. And again, we want to take a look at our common planning time and make it more structured. We want the teachers to be able to focus on the student data, work on shared lesson plans. The teachers have wonderful ideas and they need to be able to work together and share those ideas, and we need to be able to give them the time to do it. And I want them to delve into the Wonders program. So this is our first year working on Wonders 2020. So they're all using it. They're all getting into it. But next year, I think they'll be able to, the second year, they're more comfortable. And I want them to be able to use all the wealth of resources that come with Wonders, not just to work with the struggling students, but to work with the advanced students too. And like the others, we've been starting to use that common planning time to collaborate with district content specialists, and they've been another great wealth of resources for the teachers. I'd also like to be able to have some more vertical teaming. By vertical teaming, I mean each grade level sits together with a different grade level. They work on sharing ideas, and it's always nice for one grade level to know what the other one did before they get up there, and the current grade level needs to know what their children are expected to do before they get to the next grade. So they need time to be able to work on that. A project that we need to do at Johnny Appleseed School is to update the cafeteria. We really want to use that space more efficiently. We'd like to make it more than just a place to go have lunch. So we want to be able to use it kind of as a hub, an academics a hub, have more learning going on in there, have more social interactions in the cafeteria, use it for community events, and to showcase the arts. And it needs a little updating. As far as technology goes, I think Johnny Appleseed School has always been on kind of the cutting edge of technology, thanks to the past principal, Dr. Curry, and we need to continue that. We have projectors that are getting older, and I'd like to replace those with touchscreen panels. I have a few of them right now, and the teachers who use them are using them innovatively, and they have mentioned that due to the interaction that you can do with those touchscreen panels, the children are much more engaged, and that's the focus of the year is engagement. And one of the things under technology is that we need to look at some charging solutions. The children are using the Chromebooks daily, and so we need to kind of look at more efficient and effective ways to charge those Chromebooks. And our lowest customers.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Margaret Mitchell. I'm the principal of early childhood here in Leominster, and that includes Pre-Street Kindergarten, Bennett Preschool, and Riveting Preschool at Somerset. Thank you for having us this evening. As my colleagues echoed this evening, we'll share a lot of the same goals and focus points for us here in early childhood. And so our first improvement goal, we'll use both curricular content-driven formative assessments as well as our diagnostic screening tools to identify student learning gaps and use this data to build bridges for students to access grade level content using appropriate scaffolding of student support. So to simplify that, we're really using all of our data, even with our youngest learners. That includes the social emotional piece as well. And we're very fortunate to have a very strong team, even though our schools are smaller. We do have outstanding guidance support, as well as intervention. And so together, we work as a team to really look at all of the assessment data, to really provide students, even our youngest learners, with everything that they need. And we meet regularly to analyze that data, to check on student progress. And that's really an important goal for us with our youngest students. The second goal, and something that's really exciting for us, and our schools are a little smaller, so getting in that common planning time is a critical piece for us, for teachers to meet together, to share their ideas, to talk about students. And we have different focus areas weekly for our common planning time. And so this is for teachers to conduct modified lesson studies to ensure grade level work and high quality instruction. And so as Patty mentioned, Wonders is new for us also because it's a newer version. We also now have the younger version of Wonders for our preschool students. So our curriculum is fully aligned. And so this common planning time is so critical for our teachers to have time to talk about the new curriculum, discuss their lessons, what worked, what didn't, how we engage students, what's coming up, and how do we look at these lessons to really ensure that our students are really getting everything that they need. Which leads me to our academic focus area. And it's really important that we utilize this common planning time, to really look at the progress for all our subgroups using high quality data-driven instruction. We're also partnering with our content area specialists at the district level. We've already started this work and really looking to our center-based instructional time. So when we're working with our young students, we often have whole group time, and then we have center-based instruction. And the center-based instruction for our young learners is a critical piece. And so we want to make sure that during that time, students are getting the highest quality instruction that they can receive during those centers. So we're really looking at that, and we're working with Jillian Santucci, who's been wonderful and is going to start that work with us this year, and we hope to continue that into the following year. In terms of other improvements, so for technology, I know Patty mentioned the touch view screens. They are amazing. We have, with the help of and support of our technology department through Mr. Mamoni, we have most of our preschool classrooms who have the touch view screens now, and it is absolutely amazing. So if you envision a large iPad, that's really what they look like. Students can come up and interact with them. They're right at their level, and it's amazing to see the teachers using these. And we have a few more to implement in the preschool, and then our goal is to also look at pre-street. We've also started installing some there, and with the help and support of the technology department, we hope to do that as well for pre-street to replace our older projectors with the touch view screens. It's just a more cost-effective way of moving forward, and the engagement from the students is unbelievable. So it's a lot of fun to watch, especially with our curriculum. And then in terms of physical improvements, we really need to look at the front stairs of Pre-Street School. Our building, as you know, is older, and it's something that I've already started discussions with our buildings facilities director, and who's been very supportive of our schools. So we hope to look at the repair of those stairs, and then we have possibly addition of portables at Bennett and Pre-Street schools that may be coming our way. Thank you.
If you're ever having a bad day, go to Pre-Street. It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Are those going to be doing an update of some of the cafeteria?
Do you have a microphone?
Was Chartwell's planning to do an update of some of the
Yes.
cafeterias that one?
That's in the process right now with the city. So I think they're ready to do some of that work.
Okay. And then I know Drake mentioned playground equipment, and I know Colleen, I think you and I spoke pre-COVID about some playground equipment sort of stuff. Are other schools having needs for playground equipment?
We do, but I just given what's going on, I'm gonna hold off on that.
I'll take one.
Okay.
We'll certainly always open that early childhood as well.
There's nothing like swings at the elementary level. They love their swings.
That it? What's that, Ron?
The play, because I was jotting down things and I underlined the playground, I was looking in the yellow sheet, the playground equipment. You can all jump in. Don't be afraid. What are the individual costs of the playground equipment?
So there are general estimates.
Yeah. Because I would go ahead.
Playground can cost you $100,000 to $1,000. The sky's the limit when it comes to that. So obviously we're not going to go crazy, but we would like to provide them at least the basics. Is what I'm going with, right? So right now, at least for my project, I'm looking at about a total of about $45,000 to $50,000. Is what I'm looking at, which is when it comes to playground, it can get very expensive very, very quickly. You're looking at $200,000 to $300,000 in a small area. But again, and I repair some of the stuff that is already there, replace some of the stuff that it just needs to go because it could become a safety issue, and then perhaps condition a couple of areas to provide more options for students. So again, it could go from a conservative amount to a big amount. So trying to at least get a basic started.
If you look on his line item budget sheet, Ronnie, at the very end, he has a few of the costs already spelled out.
Yeah, I got that $16,000,
Right.
but I was
even below that, it's very small spread. I can even see it.
at the bottom, 15,000, right? The fencing, but I guess I realize I'm very dull with numbers. Is that, when you said those numbers 45 or whatever, that's adding them all up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And what's the life expectancy of those of the playground equipment?
Yeah, it all depends on what specific piece you're talking about, right? I mean, if you have a climbing structure, now they're coming out, I don't know, take what name for it, but it's a really hard whether system plastic absorbed, most can last years. Swings get a little more beat up because it's the nature of what they are, you know. So those maybe the life expectancy of those is a little shorter. So it all depends which piece you're talking about. But I'll say a good 5 to 10 years is a good range when you're looking at these pieces to provide that those options for students.
And I know that some of the new equipment is coming out with equipment that's good for students with all different kinds of disabilities.
Well, that's where I was trying to tease that out of you guys. I was fishing. I'm sorry. I hate to do
I
that.
thought you just drove that bike all, I didn't know you fished.
Yeah, I do fish, but you're right. I do ride the bike too. But when I'm riding, I look around at all the playground. You're right. Go ahead. Shoot me with it. Go ahead. But it's just, go ahead. No, Brandon, go ahead. I was gonna ask another question, but I don't want to dominate.
Just go on. Anybody.
This is more to the superintendent. First, regarding playgrounds, do we use ARPA funds for those?
Well, that's where I was trying to reel it in. Someone was gonna stop me.
We were deep sea.
I'll get there quicker.
Just ask.
Secondly, through my conversation with Andres the other day, and Jeff brought it up today, how is the state handling, seeing they've kind of moved on from COVID absentee problems? Is that going to be a problem at the end of the year?
I'm looking at Laureen because she is our accountability. Superintendents across the state have asked that attendance be dropped from accountability. It's still in discussion because it's just been 2 years of this. So it is a conversation. We're hoping that that's going to change. But meanwhile, we just need to move forward at this point. I would say even this week, we noticed such an improvement already. The nice weather just seems to bring everybody back out. So we're on top of it.
Brought up a point, and I was hoping the others would jump in. You know, you were saying about how, and I might be misquoting you. You can stop me when you were saying sometimes the parents will say, "You can stay home today and don't go to school." Now I'm jumping that to what you were saying and what Ren was saying. How much is the absenteeism related to the parent telling the kid to stay home today? How much of an influence? How much of an influence is it?
If they feel sick, please don't send your child.
Right, but if they're not sick,
Right.
I'm not the one that said it.
Yeah.
He did, and I'm going to pick on him. I want him to tell me. Does that affect, equitably the rest of the schools? Does that happen? And how do you deal with that? If it's not the kid that's doing the problem, it's the parents.
Right, and I mentioned that not as a matter of that is a big problem, but I do know that any given day, it's too birthday today, so it's nothing. I don't consider that to be the major factor of absences. I really don't. I think there are other major factors that we could talk about for a while. I just used this as an example, but for the purpose of what I was saying, when a child wants to be at school, this happened to me. I have an 8-year-old and a 15-year-old. They love me in school. So they're gonna be like, my daughter is there to me the other day. She has her physical and she's like, can we change that? I'm gonna have to go to school early. And that's what I was referring to. I didn't say that as a matter of like, that's a big issue, the parents saying stay home today. I don't see it that way. There are other more reasons, major reasons why attendance has been an issue, but that was just an example.
Brandon, you're all done?
Yes, thank you.
All right.
Speaking of this attendance and just mental awareness in general, what could that be a correlation between the two, where mental awareness in the schools will help attendance? But what could we do to improve it? Could it be any part of the essay, even if the short-term goal that we have to improve that? I think that could also help with that attendance part of it as well. Kind of putting the two together and working on something on that.
I see, yeah, it's coming. Did somebody want to comment about that? Go ahead, Colleen.
I know we have a little task force at Northwest that's working on that and trying to tie it into our PBIS, our positive incentive system. And what we were realizing is the incentives weren't really matching what students were looking for, so they brainstormed, and we're using our budget money to purchase some of those things.
Yeah.
Then we'll know all the price tickets, and then our council is going to use as much as possible. I don't know if it's a good question.
No, yeah, it does a little bit. But my daughter goes on, so she loves the pot stickers all the time. I just wasn't sure if there's something we could do professionally with the mental awareness that would help attendance.
So we have a curriculum.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a non-negotiable. You must work through that, connecting with students, having these discussions. At the elementary level, this staff, they wrap the little guys up in bubble wrap. So they're very quick to respond. They're very quick to call parents. The guidance staff is incredible, the way they jump in and the activities that they do. So at this level, it seems easier to build that trust factor with our students. They've listened to everything the adults do. You just got to watch them in the hall to know. You know, the hardest part during the day literally is lunch, trying to open up those note cards. If you've ever done it, it's crazy. It just gets, right? It's a pain.
It's part of the whole critical thinking. So, patience.
And dexterity.
So patients are not there. So we have curriculum, we have, you know, all sorts of incentive programs at each one of the buildings. That sense of belonging is the crux of getting students to want to come to school. And sometimes there are factors that are beyond the qualifications of a school, but I would have to say every building and their guidance staff has a repertoire of outside sources. We have many, many outside facilities that come and work with students, work with us. When we know it's beyond us, we know where to go.
And I would also think now that we are seeing a lessening of, you know, sort of COVID issues and people are getting back out there, there's going to be more activities that are more school-wide based that are another way for engagement of students for fun things, whether it's the lawn party at, you know, JA or whatever, field day at Northwest. Those kinds of, you know,
Even like at the high
after
school,
school
the prom.
events, the prom, whatever it is.
Everybody is so buzzed that we're having a prom this year in 2 years. You know,
So those are other ways to engage and
Field
be
days
able to
are
buy
coming
in
back.
and feel connected.
I apologize. I was late. I was at Francis Drake. We've handed out some awards for basketball program. We've done forever. So maybe I missed this, but how many students aren't coming to school on a regular basis? Did you already give that number?
No, it's coming in the next presentation. So
okay. And so, has every parent been contacted? That's part of the presentation. So we know why they're not.
Right? We know why they send.
We have that down.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, it's your right knee, but it's really your left knee. I can work on the knee all day long. It's not going to help. But so you have all that. That's the next presentation. Okay. Right. Anyone else? Great.
So just a couple of questions around, I heard a lot about using data in a different number of ways. How do you guys use it? Is it kind of just a manual pull of information? You know, you mentioned meeting with teachers and looking through grade books or something like that. Do you guys have any analytical tools that tell you, you know, will alert you of something? For example, like maybe not at the elementary school level, but if you knew that every Monday, all 3 kids in the same household are out, you know, every Monday or late to school every Monday, you know, knowing of that and alerting a guidance counselor or something, or even making a phone call home, maybe that would help. So
we do that. The tracing. Okay. So when we have a student that's out in the system, there's already a link that pops up right away. You can see their siblings. Yeah. And so we can check on that and we do, especially because those can be very serious concerns. And so sometimes it may not just be a phone call, it might be an SRO going to the house with a guidance staff or us calling for supports. So we're very quick. If we know a sibling is somewhere in the other buildings and Johnny's been out so many times, we start checking all of that. We can see into each other's databases.
Yeah. And I'll just, from my own observation at Fallbrook and Samoset, as principals, it seems like you know every kid. I mean, when I walk with Jeff, like, you know, every kid that walked to school, you know, maybe they were planted or not, I don't know, but it seemed like you knew everybody and what their struggles were. And I thought that was really impressive. And, you know, I thought that was great. So from a technology standpoint, as far as the touch view, this may be totally not public education stuff, but do you guys have a life cycle for equipment? Or is it just go until it breaks?
No, we used to.
No, we don't want it to break, because then we don't have a backup.
Right.
We have a tech support who works in the building, and she works closely with us, and we have shared documents where we keep track of how old the projectors are. And we talk about who's getting the touch screens. The first ones are going to the teachers who I know are very innovative, and we'll be able to turn around and train the others to use it. And the touch screens, if you've been watching the news lately, you've seen these. These are the ones that the newscasters are writing on with the maps.
Yeah, we have some at work.
Yeah.
We don't use it nearly as much, but I can see how the kids love it.
And Steve's office, his technology team, each one of those tech have a master list with end of life. They have a plan, a recycling plan. So
and that's how we do our projections.
Right. So that's how, when they put in for technology in their building-based budgets, they meet with Steve to say, hey, I would like to do this. And he can quickly say, well, I think you need to do more or less. This is where it needs to go. So his tech has been able to build an inventory very quickly.
Awesome. And I think the last question I had was, I heard about at least one school asking about staffing. How do we look at staffing ratios across the board? I guess it's a just general question.
Want me to take that one? Yeah, everyone's like, yeah, well, I'll take that one. So each one of the buildings, we have a ratio, a recommendation of what we would like for class size, and that's approved by the school committee. That's the first piece of issues. Then we also have specialized programming in each one of these buildings that have requirements for them. So we make sure all of that is charted and graphed. All of it goes through our HR office. So when someone says, for instance, Colleen said, I need another ELL teacher. Right now, she has the most L students in the district, and 3 teachers is not enough for 160 students into the country. So we looked at that, we looked at the ratios, what the timing is, and it's vetted that she does need a 4th ELL teacher, and her special education is quite high. So in special education office has it all laid down. This year, we were able to figure out where every parent, tutor, teacher, their ratio, and then if a student graduates or leaves us, what happens to that support? In the past, that person sort of just got absorbed into the school, and then we lost them. So somehow we can't do that anymore. So we have all that tracked right now. So what's being asked for tonight, those legitimate requests, and the detailed supports getting that step.
And I really like the idea of vertical teamwork or team meetings. I like that idea.
Yeah. They learn a lot from each other.
I'll feed off of him because we're both data guys. And so I look at, let me just, I don't want to oversimplify this, but just it's on my brain. So I have to kind of in this typical year, let's forget these last 2 as much as we possibly can. Maybe September, we start a fresh year. I look at all students, they all start at the same time, right? Every teacher knows exactly where that student has to be, right? That's what I think I heard everybody say is, we know where everybody is, where you know everybody has to be. We have less than 3 months to figure in days off, spring vacation. Every student starts on the way. The ultimate goal is to have every student finish with an A, right? And just being superior in whatever that subject matter was. But they don't all finish at that capacity. I think our conversations, I don't speak for everybody, but I'm sensing the direction that we're going is we want to make sure, and we want to monitor along the way to make sure that as we meet with you, or the information that we get is that there are 6,000 kids in the public school system. There's 200 in the first grade. They are all at, 80% of them are at where they ought to be in the month of September. And then October and November. So somewhere along the line, that diagnosis or that monitoring of data tells us something's not going right. I don't know what that might be. Could be the flu. I mean, obviously the COVID isn't going away. It's going to be treated the same way as the flu, right? So we'll go and get our booster shots and the flu shot and this shot and that shot. And that's how we'll do things. At the end of the year, where I see we are is because we have more mobility, more flexibility in terms of being able to adapt along the way for each student. Now, it's like the marathon. They may all start at the same time, but not everybody practice, not everybody condition themselves, not everybody's able to do that. But I think what we want to know is, as we're going along, where are we at as a whole entire school system?
So that's our next presentation.
80% of the way there. And that's been my difficult part over the years is the end of the year we get here and we don't do well in particular areas in the MCAS. And it's, well, how did that happen? If we know where we were in December, how do we get to this point where we didn't do well, right? So we have all these things to monitor along the way. Yet we get to the finish line and we didn't do well. We didn't do what we thought we would. Not that every student's going to ace the MCAS, but we're talking about certain areas of passing MCAS. And the last time we did this before COVID, we didn't do well in a lot of categories. So data has to tell us something, but it sounds good what you're saying. I think we want to be reassured that along the way that we're going to finish in June in 3 months. And I know this year is an example that we're going to finish in June and we will have, our achievements should be higher, right? Ultimately, they should be higher unless something serious that went wrong in the last month or two. Our achievements should be there, correct? I mean, our goals are whatever we use for monitoring or evaluation or testing should be there, right? I mean, that's, I think, the conversations we've had already is, where's misalignment? Where does that happen and how?
I think part of you missed.
I'm asking that.
I was going to say, you also missed the Etude presentation, and
Yes.
some of that was
Right.
answered
But
around.
in fairness, I've been listening to this now for 29 years. I've been talking about data-driven decision-making for 29 years. Our MCAS, if you looked at the last ones, we're good. They weren't stellar. But I keep hearing that we're starting off, we're doing fine, we're doing this, we're going to team meetings. And our responsibility as a school committee is to each of those children, every single one of them, no matter who they are. And I want to be able to talk to a parent who says, geez, I don't know what happened. I want to be able to tell that parent what happened, right? Looking back at the diagnosis to see did something happen, was it death in the family, did something happen in the last month that they didn't do well? Because MCAS and all these tests we give them are basically, even if they do well on one, that might be they just had a bad day when they took the other test. So I don't know how you want to answer that, but that's certainly, I think, what the direction that we're going is achievement, right? How do we receive how does that student get the best out of our school system? And we're doing all this testing along the way, diagnosis, we can tell you where a kid is today. Well, maybe the next presentation is telling us where the bulk of the kids are today.
Well, I'll speak if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, so and I didn't mean to oversimplify it, but just
no. And I know Lorraine's going to speak to a lot of the specific questions of what you're asking, but I would just say on every individual student, we know exactly where they are. The parent knows where they are. There's no surprises. We don't sit down and get winter or spring data, and the parent is surprised. We have these relationships with both the students and the families, and that's sort of that's what we have to work with. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, keep going.
Where at the end of the year, right, we may not have the results that we obviously all want. We all want all of our students to be proficient in MCAS. We know that's not always the case. I think I can speak for Fallbrook. I know that every student you mentioned, whether it's back in the family, I have a general sense of what maybe inhibited that student from succeeding, from reaching what we wanted to reach, if that makes sense. So it's not like we go through the school year and then say, wow, the student didn't perform like we thought. There are tiered supports that are put in place. There's no surprises, I think, in our end. I think from the district view, sometimes it might look that way. We're starting here, you expect a certain level, but then at the end of the year, we all have high expectations of our students. Right. And we all are disappointed, I think, sometimes.
But I guess what the concern is, what do you do along the way with the student, listen to them, needs that extra help? I think what we want to be assured is, and maybe we have to take some money out of this year's budget, set it aside. So mid-year, when you say, I got 6 students that I really need to work on. I need to bring in extra staff, part-time, whatever, tutors, whatever, to help them continue on, because that teacher's already got 30 kids or 22 kids. I don't know if that teacher can catch up. I'm just saying, those are real life things.
Well, there's so many, there's so many variables.
Every kid is a variable. Yep. Right? I mean, and that's why we use tools to see where we're at with each student. Because I just think that, especially younger grades, if they don't get it, then we just lost 2 years. You can't, it's hard to go back and take it out, especially for the younger students, right? It's a hard thing those are critical times. I think we did the best. We're probably better than most school districts did to keep them going. And I think the teachers were great and brought work home and did everything else. I think everybody did everything they possibly could, but sometimes you can't go back. So I worry about, that student that somehow or another slipping away, and that we have the ability to be able to help them catch up so they do finish to their full potential. And maybe that's what we do is, set aside some funds so it's sitting there. And then when you need the help during the course of the year, and you need somebody to work with so many students, and again, they're going to be at different levels, you have something you can come back to, again.
Yeah, I'll add a couple of things to it. As mentioned already, every student is its own specific case, but we have a standard, right? We call it grade level performance, right? We have a standard. This is a standard right here. It was mentioned earlier that all start with an A. Not so much, right? Because they start at different places. Now it becomes our responsibility that whether the students start here or anywhere in between that standard, it becomes our responsibility to find the supports that will help them move along, right? But not every student starts in the same place.
Well, they do, because you open a book and it's the same book.
No, I'm talking
the same
about
lesson.
Right, but I'm talking about where they're at in terms of the learning. They come to us from all kinds of walks of life, so they don't start at the same place. They use the same curriculum, yes, but they don't start at the same place. So that's what it takes: that daily communication and problem solving with the teachers and with the support staff to see what does Johnny need compared to whomever, right? Let's give him what he needs. Now, at the end of the year, do we all want everyone to be at the very top? Absolutely, but you have to also be reasonable in terms of, like, if you start here, then the student will see he's gonna need extra supports. And that is that constant figure it out to put them as high as we can. Right. And so that is a daily, that's what we spend the day on every single day. Like,
no, I didn't say, I don't want you to misunderstand what I said. I didn't say every student's the same. I said they start the same day. Right. Book. Yeah. The teacher has a lesson plan. The teacher knows by day where that's all the students need to be. Now, the teacher can work as hard as they can, but it's going to be hard to make sure everybody keeps up with that. What I'm saying is maybe that's where it's the first time we've had flexibility in our budget to be able to allocate funds so that if you have 10 kids and maybe each one of them is stuck somewhere along the line, and you have that other flexibility to lose whatever it might be. Be able to help them catch up so they don't fall behind a month or two or whatever, because you don't have the resources. That's what I'm getting to, right? So they all lead, and then somewhere along the line, somebody starts to fall back for whatever reason. How do you put the resources, as you said? You got to have the resources, right? Okay. So the student can catch up. Now, not everybody can finish first in the marathon. In fact, only one person. All right, anything else? Yes, Mr. Gray.
With respect to mental health, this is for all of you. How many licensed mental health counselors or social workers do you have for schools?
I can start. So we're very fortunate, even though our schools are smaller, we do have a guidance person in each one of our 3 buildings.
Are they licensed?
Yes.
Sorry to cut you.
Yes, they are. Yes. So we're very fortunate in that respect. And they all work very closely together because our students often transition from the preschool to the kindergarten. So they work very closely together. So we're very fortunate to have that staff on board.
And we have 2 top-notch guidance counselors. One is also a licensed clinician outside. And we also have outside clinicians who come in and work with students who are struggling, who need that a little bit more time. Very often there are parents who can't take their child to therapy after school, so they come into school.
And it's free.
It's through their insurance.
We have the same.
Similar. We have one license. lucky to, because it was, one licensed social worker, or adjustment counselor, I should say, adjustment counselor, and a licensed guidance counselor as well. And I tell you, every minute they spend is amazing the work those guys do, and they have to, because there's so much going on, and they work with all teachers. So I feel that we are very strong in department in that sense. Can you always use more for less rich, but they do an amazing job.
Would you like to see more?
And honestly, at this point, I think it's to me, and I can't speak for anybody else. We need to see where the dust settles with now that we're getting out of this whole nightmare, right? I think it will be better able to answer that in the future. Right now, I think we are holding our own, and should be able to continue to move forward. They have very strong relationship with teachers and with families. It's an all-day affair. Communicating, checking in. I feel very fortunate to have that.
So I have one question. We have 2 licensed school adjustment counselors. We have 1 licensed guidance counselor. We have a school psychologist, and we also have the outside clinicians that come in. And just to echo like what my colleague was saying, a real strong team. They keep us informed all the time of things that are going on. They communicate with each other in other buildings if there's an issue going on. We can look each other, all the guys counselor, Academy School, or Magic School, or Jack. Just kind of Andy is a good resource for us at Priest, and Iready's assistant principal. They'll reach out if we have a home situation thing going on, or vice versa. So there's a lot of communication, and I think that's what's keeping us going.
So we have, as a former guidance counselor, we have a guidance team as well. That includes myself, the assistant principal, and we do have 2 licensed people. And one of our programs at our school, and I'll share this in our program, is our student support center, which is students with a variety of issues, whether trauma-based or it's mostly behavioral. So one of those counselors is really attached to that program, and we have that need to add a 3rd person, which is needed, and will be fantastic.
We also have flexibility within our special education budget. Should we need further consultants to come in, or maybe a BCBA or someone with a specialized license to come in? So we always have that open option to come more.
Can ESSER funds be used for hiring more?
As long as people know that it is a limited amount of funding, because it's only through 2024. So our job descriptions say that. So
right.
Yes.
Well, now is probably a good time to have more on board.
We're looking. We are always looking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hope to go to work.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you very much. Nice presentation. Ms. Lorraine.
Just away from the mic.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
What I wanted to ask you, touched on it, but
Right.
Greg touched on it, and secondly, touched on, it was funded by the kids' parents' insurance. What do you do if the insurance tells them or you that they have a limited amount of time or a limited amount of visits?
The family works those issues out. That's between the family and their provider.
Some providers offer sliding fee scales.
Yeah.
Right.
They're just doing the visit at the school, as opposed to the parent bringing them to an outpatient.
Yeah.
I know, but there's still sometimes they'll say it's
Right,
limited
depending
amount
on
of.
your insurance, but that's all that is.
And so that's where I was leading with where he was asking, will opera cover if they say X amount of
No.
visits?
Not private, not a private person.
Well, when does a private become public?
It doesn't, unless they
If it's
work
affecting
for
the
the school
kids'
system.
performance in school, when does the private become public? When does the public become private? Okay, we're talking about Probably based on the situation, what's going on, if they can handle it internally in the school, if not, then maybe they need outside resources. And
We're talking about people who are not employed by the school. They're
I
employed by
realize that. I know I'm
agencies.
stepping on a bunch of broken eggs. I realize that. But he brought it up, and I figured I'd scramble a little bit more. What happens if they say if it's an end date on the amount of time that they can be seen?
The insurance company, you mean?
Yeah, the insurance company.
That's something that fight that all the time, and then if the demand is there, they get an extension on their insurance. That's nothing that we pry into.
I didn't
Do a
ask
citing
them
fee
if you were
scale.
Brian, but
Yeah.
you said the parents are fighting for that. But here we're talking about providing support for the parents and for the kids. Ergo, we need to, I'm just asking.
Well,
when does the public become private and when does the private become public? It's a very simple
It's
question.
a combination of the two. And what can't be handled in the school, that, as they said, they might need outside resources, right? Basically mutual aid for somebody else to assist, outside services, then maybe an insurance pays or Mass Health pays or somebody else pays. I would imagine it depends on the situation. Right?
Yeah. I'm just asking, how do you help the parent if they have a problem?
And that's something that when we deliberate we have some conversation, Greg had brought up, do we have enough people on staff? Can we get them?
Well, that leads to the part. Again,
can we?
When does the public become private and the private become public? I realize I'm sounding like a broken record.
Right, but
I realize that. And as infuriating as that question is, it's infuriating out there too.
Ron, it's just simple. If it can be handled internally, I think they're saying they do. If it needs to be handled in combination with outside resources, they'll do that. If it just, maybe it's something that they can't handle inside the school district at all, then that maybe has to be referred out to another agency. So there's probably three different scenarios.
I guess basically, who does the referring? That's what I'm asking.
So pediatricians do the referring, guidance counselors can do the referring, the Department of Children and Families does the referring.
Police department,
The police, there's all kinds of referrals.
mandatory
Right,
report.
there's places
I
you
can't
can
be the
go.
only person that's asking these questions.
We
You
just
can
gave
go
you all
online.
the answers.
Right, you can go online.
All right,
and
we're
it
gonna
gives you
move
All right,
it
I'll
on.
stop.
And
I'm sorry.
all right, we'll get a chance, Ron, to talk more
I'm
about
sorry
it,
I
because I
asked
think
the
Greg brought it up is, we asked the question, how many do we have? Is it enough? So we'll once we reach the final, after we've listened to and had conversation with everybody, then we'll sit down and we'll talk about these things in the budget presentation. We'll have to decide whether we have enough resources or we don't. And then if we want to allocate more money towards it, whether we can even find these people, or maybe there's an agency that we have to hire. I don't know. There are all those things that are uncertain tonight, right? So we'll have a chance to drill a little more down on that. All right. Good evening. By the way, is this a new design of a microphone? Because can we afford to get some microphones in here that work? Yeah, thank goodness. I thought it was just mine over the years that I wore out. And then I realized every single one of them is missing. Delays. You sure this wasn't intentional? These have been gone, they've been gone for 5 years.
But they've held up
Where
well.
are they coming from?
They're on trucks.
They haven't invented them yet. They only gave us a part of it. All right, let's go. Lauren, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I'm coming in front of you tonight to share some student achievement information.
Yes, thank you.
And yes, student achievement across the world, across the country, and in Leominster, Massachusetts, is a major concern. Our children have gaps, have areas that they either missed or didn't get enough intervention over the last 2 years. Through no fault of most people, everyone is working very, very diligently. I'm amazed, as is Steve, with the level of technology support. Our teachers jumped in. We're a Google district, and there's these Google classrooms that you see there are a masterpiece, and they are very functional for children. But the academic gaps that we have is a major concern. We do assessments with our students in a variety of ways. The two that I'm going to talk about tonight, what we would call benchmark interim assessments. And the data that I'm bringing you tonight is really about growth. There is data to show where every child is based on national norms. And if they are at grade level, if they are below grade level or above, and it goes down into very minute detail as to, in mathematics, do they have a gap in their number sense? Do they have a gap in measurement or data? Do they have a gap in proportional reasoning? So that would be a presentation that would take us many, many, many hours. What I have brought to you is what we're doing this year, where our students are as far as growth is concerned this year. So the first program I just want to talk a little bit about, and I have Kyle is the gentleman behind the curtain. So Kyle's moving or driving for me. You do have a small set of slides, but they're the exact same things that are up on the screen. The first assessment, some of you may know about if you're a parent or you've been here for the last few years. It's called the Measure of Academic Progress, or we refer to it as MAP. And we use that in kindergarten through 5th grade this year. It is an assessment that we do fall, winter, and spring, and it is an adaptive assessment. So you take it in ELA and mathematics. Every child answers a couple of questions, and then depending on where they, how they answer those, how successful they are, the system will then prompt them to have a more difficult question, or it'll prompt them to have a simpler question. So throughout the assessment, it takes them a couple of sessions, so a good hour or so. The program, it's all digital based, will move them along, and at the end of the time for the assessment, we find out where they are compared to national norms. So both of these assessments that we use are national assessments. Talked earlier this year about ROSH scores or ROSH units, which is what the MAP program uses as their unit of measurement. It's basically the same. We measure miles per hour when we're measuring speed. When you're using MAP, everything is in terms of a RIT or a ROSH unit. And these assessments, as I said, are done fall, winter, and spring. And we are allowed to see, or we do get to see where they are in the fall, how they are progressing, and then tracking the overall progression or growth that they would be expected to maintain. So Kyle's going to go to the next screen for me. This is a bar graph, and I'll just orient you to it. The diamond shape is the grade level projected growth for the middle of a school year. So this is where a child should be based on the US schools national norm data. And then the solid blue bar or the pale blue is where our students in Leominster are on their math scores for the winter assessment.
So 4th grade, we did well.
No, actually, that's
worse.
So the diamond is where our students are.
No, the bar.
Okay.
So the diamond.
Right. So diamond is where we should be.
So first through
Yes.
third, we did really well.
Okay.
4th and 5th are a little bit.
So as you'll see, we have provided our building level administrators and our teachers with professional development on accelerating learning. Really, the premise of that is to start the school year K-5 with MAP, determine where the children are, and provide them with grade level instruction on grade level materials. And wherever a child needs additional supports, we're doing our best to provide just-in-time supports. So Johnny has a deficit on proportional reasoning. And that math teacher knows that from the fall assessment and provides some supports or brings in Title I content specialists to provide supports or interventionists. So the child is still getting grade level material, but is also getting the just-in-time supports that they need. This year, it's very, very tricky because children are everywhere. In the past, we might have had a teacher have 4 or maybe 5 small groups. So they will do their general math or their ELA instruction, and then they break the children out by need. This year, it's almost an individual level of need where the children are. The children who did very well with the work at home and the digital-based instruction, they're on grade level or they're above. And then other children, for whatever the reasons might be, have the gaps. It's very troubling this year, and our teachers are working extremely difficult in difficult times. But I'll tell you, what they are doing and what this is showing is based on where this assessment says we should be. Right now in mathematics, all of the grades except for 4th, and the teachers all know that, they've been given that information, the children on average are maintaining the growth that they should have for the middle of the year. Sure.
When was the winter one?
It was in January.
And when COVID, that's when all the spike was going on. Was there any concern with the COVID and the results?
So it took us a little bit, it took us a little longer to actually get all of the children assessed. We kept the window open, so children who might have had to be quarantined or were not home. We actually did have some children who took the assessment at home as they had done last year. That's not an ideal situation, but as many children as we could, we did make sure that we assessed them.
Do you think any of that concern? Do you think just with all that craziness going on, that affected any of the results on this? I guess goes to my next question. Do you expect better results in spring? When is the spring one getting done?
So the spring one will be done in May. Yeah. What we have found though is despite everything that's going on, these children, when they're in school, are actually learning and they are showing growth at a typically developing level for this year. I will say though, to the mayor's concern, many of them started much lower this year than they have started in the past at every grade level. But despite everything else that's going on, the students and the children, things that are happening in the classroom, they are actually showing growth.
So the diamond is projected growth based on testing from the fall, or is it where a cohort was last winter?
So I know we have many different growth measurements. Yeah. And the MCAS growth measurement is completely different than math, and the other Iready is a little bit different too. So it's based on the national norms for the last few years. So MAP does they do research, and I want to think that it's a 5-year piece, and then they continue to do that. So this a typically developing kindergartner should be somewhere around 9 RIT units midway through the year. And so our students are at 10. Then by the end of the year, a kindergartner, because they do show a tremendous amount of growth, that they're going to be at approximately 18 by the end of the year. That's where we'd like to see them. So midway through the year, our students are showing the growth that we would expect of them.
So just in terms of logistics, right? Not to date myself, but we used to have SRA kits.
Yes.
Well, you couldn't move up until you sort of got through,
Yes.
Right? I mean, you couldn't. But math is different than say history, because math has one correct answer here. History is, it's
sometimes there's lots of answers.
There is history, and we can even change it. But as we go, 5 and 5 is always going to be 10, and these firewalls won't move until you got these essential skills down. I mean, you're not going to jump up to 20 times 20. You're going to master the
progression. Sure.
And then as that firewall moves with your progression. So what happens when a student, I'm talking about the logistics of the program, when a student, it just doesn't click for some reason, 5 times 10 isn't equal to 50 anymore. And does it keep bouncing back different scenarios to that student to say, let's try it this way?
So one of the programs that we are using this year with our students is it's a program that does just that for them. So that's one of the things we put into place. It's called ZERN for our elementary. And the students are in the missions as a supplement to what they're doing in their regular class. And if the student gets stuck, the teacher sees that they are stuck, there's help for the student, and the student can practice it a couple of times. Then the teacher gets an alert that says, this child needs actual intervention. So the teacher would then be working with them, maybe working on the computer with them, or giving them a couple of little individual support sessions for them to move on.
And
so
can they use their Chromebooks to take
they
home with them?
absolutely are using
So they
them.
can keep going and then so they can progress from a Friday to a Monday.
Yes.
For a long weekend, they can catch themselves back up using this
So
map system.
the MAP system itself is the diagnostic, it's the benchmark assessment. And it is, as I said, adapted. So a student will get to a threshold every single assessment that they take for MAP or ELA that they have not seen before, because they're going to get pushed based on the number of questions they get correct. The product that we're talking about that is Zern, that's a digital-based product too. It's amazing what the programs can do. It's a little more gamification to that.
So it's not it's not sole purposes to diagnose. It's to teach, right?
More of an intervention.
Yeah.
Individualized.
I don't know where to go. Go ahead. Anybody else? We'll just start with Greg and go around.
Well, do you want to keep going to the?
I can save mine to the end.
Okay. Why
I wrote
don't,
it
why
down.
don't we go through?
Sure.
Go on it.
So Kyle's going to show you the MAP reading.
Something great.
Something great is happening in second grade. And
Yeah.
you know what, we actually went, after this information came out, and we went to the schools and we talked to second grade teachers to say, tell us a little bit about this. So even though there's been a lot of disruption, those second graders weren't in school as first graders. This is one of their first years of really getting into the instruction in the classroom with their teachers, and the teachers are saying that they are thriving at the academics. And so it really could be a COVID concern. That certainly is anecdotal from the teachers, but we heard it at a number of schools that second grade specifically, the students are just loving the fact that they're interacting with their teachers in the classroom.
So, okay.
The diamonds, again, are where the students, how much growth they should have made. And then the blue bar is where our Leominster, the average of our Leominster students at each of those grades.
Okay. We'll go around.
I just want a question about, because it's going to be on every graph. If you go back to the
back to the back. Yes.
Doesn't have to.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So with respect to fourth and fifth grade, I see fourth grade is, so is that diamond a range? Because fourth grade is kind of touching the diamonds. And if you look at fifth grade, there's a little part of that diamond above the blue.
So this was the way that I chose to actually demonstrate it. There is a real hard number behind each of these. And so that's why I in my head knew that we were approximately 9.5 is what the kindergarten point to maintain. I don't have all of them in my head, but in fact, it's not a range. There's an actual figure behind each one of those.
All right.
It just, the diamond takes up quite a bit of space for a visual.
All right.
So it's probably the middle of the diamond.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
I
sure.
have to put a diamond within a diamond. Ron, is there something you need to ask now? Or can we wait?
Well, both of these graphs, both the reading and the math, do you have these graphs? You're the one that said, the second graders, they weren't first grade, they were first graders before, and now they're second graders. Do you have graphs that show where they were at last year? And you
Yes.
can just put them right over that?
We have historical data for all of our children at the elementary level. For math, we've been doing it for a number of years. So we do have all of the background information on our
So you
children.
can kind of project where they've been where have they been, where are they going?
Each child has a little trajectory, an individual based
Right,
on their
and you
history.
could put that right on top of the other, like a different color.
In your world, it's called My Child.
Whichever way you want to slice it. I don't care. I'm just asking.
A medical
Can you-
record, it's
A
educational
see-through
record.
thing where you put it,
Overlay, yes. it goes over
Yes,
that,
yep.
and then it goes over that, so you
Yep,
can
you can
see
do
the
it.
projection or the failure of the projection. That's all I'm asking.
So that,
I'm not trying to be,
Rosh unit or the RIC,
yeah,
that number goes from when they start taking the assessment in kindergarten right up through 5th grade. In fact, it would go through 9th grade. We're using a different product in the middle school. So it's apples to apples, so to speak. If I have a RIT score of 140 in 1st grade and I'm supposed to make a gain of 20 points, then I want to be at 160 to start out 2nd grade, and then I want to move to 180. And you will see that the amount of growth overall does become smaller and when they get to the more technical years, 4th grade, 5th grade.
That's reinforcement and expansion, but
Right.
first years of sponges, right?
Yes.
Those little kids know the difference between what the tooth fairy gave 5 years ago.
so when you
Now
say,
they know that now.
when you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you said that, you said something like 20%. When you were saying something about 20% on whichever one, the reading or the math, does that mean that they all have to perform at least 20%, or is that just a number you threw up?
That's the number that's given to us from the measures of academic progress for the thousands of students across the country that they've researched over the last 5 years. So of all the students who took that assessment, they then give us a projection of how far a kindergartner should go every single year based on those norms. And so it was approximately 20 for kindergarten. And that's based on that historical data that they provide us nationwide.
And here's the dirty question. How does Leominster, the little kids here, what's the growth factor?
Sure. Now, one thing that MAP has done for us, because we're from Massachusetts, so we don't want to do anything that's nationally known because we're going to do better than the nation does. So they actually do provide us with a Massachusetts set of norms. And they then also, for grades 3 and up, provide us with a projection for MCAS based on what our students have done as compared to other Massachusetts students. So that's a component that MAP has recently provided to us just for Massachusetts districts. So we do.
That.
I don't have that on here.
Okay.
I can provide that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So now that we get the gist of this,
Yeah.
we'll keep building until we can get to the whole.
Right.
Here's
So
where
now
we're at,
I'm
right?
going to go to a different product.
Right.
Sorry. So Kyle's going to move on to the product that we're using at the middle schools, and it's called Iready. This again is a national assessment. And Kyle, thank you very much, Kyle. This again is an adaptive assessment. So it moves with the child as they take the test. And you'll continue to move into even higher grade level work if you're continuing to be successful on the questions, or that it will continue to stay at a level or maybe even go back a little bit while the students are taking that assessment.
Good.
So the student's assessment is not based on the number that they get right. Basically, though, it's based on where they end up in the trajectory of the standards and the questions that are based on those standards. One great tool that Iready also has for us is the product that goes right along with it from the company. So they have a program called Mypath, and it is a personalized digital learning tool. So I take my assessment in the fall. I then, on my Chromebook, have a set pathway for practice and supplemental work. And it's based on where my assessment had me, not just necessarily on grade level. And it's for ELA and for mathematics. And the research shows a minimum of 60 minutes per week on these two content areas of ELA and math have shown a tremendous amount of growth. Anybody wants to read this research, we can get that for you. But it takes the Iready diagnostic and then applies that to this
tool or platform for the students to get their supplemental work.
So eventually what's going to happen is as you pass each curriculum, each area, that would just check off your MCAS. I mean, that's really where it's going. Why give students another MCAS test at 4th, 8th, and whatever they take it, when they've achieved a certain area, it's over. I mean, they've achieved it. Our system should just kick into their system saying, you've arrived.
You say you're getting rid of it.
I'm just saying, it's silly that you've got all this information. Once the student reaches that, why continue on? There's so much pressure that these kids, just the mere fact, just the words MCAS would make me, my knees start to wobble around for a couple, the stress of it all. Right, but I'm just saying, if you've got all this, when a student reaches their, they pass the MCAS in that particular area, just leave everybody alone, right?
Well, and we do very much hope, to your point, Jolie, that there are no surprises. Right. So along with these diagnostic tools, which and they're very helpful to the teachers, there's formative assessments that the teachers are doing all the time. They're still doing end of unit assessments from the curriculum product, which are the end of chapter tests that we all had or I did when I was younger. So there's still a variety of assessments. This is just one piece of it.
And I think where Ron was going is, how do you overlay that? How do you bring all these together? Well, overlay them all so that they make sense to the average person. That's eventually, right. Eventually they'll all just come to one place. I mean, you can see where this is going. It's going to come all to one place saying, this is it. This is the story.
And to what we heard from the principals,
right.
The common planning time needs to be very prescriptive so that the teachers, they have some assessment literacy themselves, so they understand how to use this, they get support in using it, and then their common planning time is really spent helping each other out. I've got these 3 children and I haven't been able to move them. You did. I can see that by your assessment. What did you do that I didn't do? Or what's a supplement that I could try?
Plus, this is going to show you trends. So if that's 2nd grade reading or whatever it might be, you get 3 years of that, or even 2 normal years. It's going to show you what's going on in the 2nd grade that we can sort of replicate in the 3rd or the 4th or whatever, right? I mean, you could bring it to that extent too. I mean, maybe 1 year is a little bit off in one area, but and then you're passing the 2nd off to the 3rd. So now you can watch the 3rd going to the 4th to the 5th till you get from the this. So it's a lot of pressure on the teacher.
It is.
It's a lot of work. And that's what I think we're getting towards. How do we help the teachers when they have students that need to catch up? Do they have the resources to catch them up? Right? We'll talk about it.
But this difference, the map versus the Iready, does it go seamless from one to the other?
No, they're 2 different platforms.
I know they're 2 different.
And to be honest,
one's a 4th, one's a 9th.
They have their own product, so they go. Each one of them has an offering from K through 9. Okay. So one of the reasons that we did choose to go with Iready was this Mypath, which is the individualized instruction that comes through the assessment. And if in fact we find that Leominster bears out the research that had been shown, then we will continue to have conversation. Do we go to Iready as a platform for the entire district? Or no, this didn't work, so we could use maps. So we can equate it, Ron, by if they're on grade level or not on grade level, but there isn't a rich score in Iready to say, I was at 140 in 5th grade, now I'm
That's
there.
where I was leading.
But we can certainly make the projection. Or
so there are different warts with Iready versus map.
Sure. Now, Kyle's going to go on. We have just a graph to show you the growth. Again, I will say, because everyone is working very hard, but there are lots of gaps in our student achievement. And this is middle school. So we could conceivably have children now in 6th grade who are 2 years below in certain parts of their ELA or mathematics versus in kindergarten or 1st grade, you might not have that. So this demonstrates growth again, the same way. This is the percent of students who in
mid-year, so January, had met their growth target. These are not as strong, these numbers are not as strong as our elementary numbers were. So we're hovering around the 50 percentile, 50% of our kids are on target to attain the growth that they need for the year. In some cases, 50% are not.
Why isn't, what happened with ninth grade?
So ninth grade, it's not really an assessment for ninth grade. There's ninth grade material in the questions. We chose to use it for ninth grade because of the COVID issues that we had. So we wanted to make sure we had something for ninth grade. There isn't a, they don't have a normed set of how far a child should go in ninth grade. So we have used it. We received, the teachers received individualized data for the students in ninth grade for this year. We probably will do it next year too, because we've had some disruption this year. But it's not, it's really, the Mypath thing goes through eighth grade. Yes.
What would your goal be in a normal typical year for that?
So this is all of our children, which means our typically developing children, as well as students who are in risk groups, such as our Ls, or may have an IEP. So we would like to see 80%.
80%.
Yeah, we would like to see 80% meeting their growth targets. So having that are moving that far. The prescriptive, Iready Mypath, the principals have put, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I won't go through those slides, but the principals put a set time in this year, every single day. It's called a win block, what I need now. And during that time, the students, 3 days of the week, they are doing their Iready Mypath using their Chromebooks, while some students might be getting individualized instruction. They're also doing the SEL program that we had purchased, the curriculum that takes place during the win block. And then there is 1 day a week where during win block, they get to make up work that they might have missed or work on a project. But the two principals at the middle school were very prescriptive in saying, we need to make sure that they're getting supports. Yes, they can bring their Chromebook home and do it at home, but we want to make sure that they're all doing it 20 minutes, three times a week for ELA and math. So Kyle, if you would mind going to reading, we're really basically in the same place, hovering around the 50th percentile. So on average, in each of the grades, 50% of our students are meeting their growth projection.
And that's related.
There.
And that's related to COVID.
Well, we had disruptions this fall.
Right.
And for many students, the disruptions did mean they were not in school, so they were absent.
And there wasn't a platform for those kids.
Correct. They did have this Iready Mypath, so they could, the students who were asked to go home to quarantine or close contact could take their Chromebook home and they could work on Mypath for ELA and mathematics, but they didn't have an instructor supporting them the way we did last year. That's right.
Look, Lorraine,
yes.
Paula, you can jump in that and tell me to shut up on him. This happening. You know, you were saying the kids, sending the kids home because they got to go on quarantine. And you know, there's literature out there that says sometimes the kids and or the adults, they get tired of the schoolwork. Have you taken that in consideration? That they don't want to do it because they're tired of all this, or they feel overwhelmed? And this ties into, what do you want to tie it into mental health?
So
go ahead, jump, guys.
There's always reasons, and we do have students that just don't want to do it. It's not that they're tired, they just don't want to do it. The teacher's able to monitor when students are on, how long they're on, the day, the time, all of it, the keystrokes. So if a student is not choosing to use it, there needs to be a conversation, because it is an individualized platform. So when this goes home, it's only 20 minutes a day. So hopefully that doesn't bring it to the point of exhaustion. But sometimes if students are really sick, the last thing you want them doing is anything until they're feeling better. So that's why we have a mix of in-school and at-home exercise for this.
Sorry.
No, we are really hoping that these last 3 full months that we have, we will be stabilizing our instruction. And we started, I'm sure Paula said it, we started this year, our teachers started this year thinking things are going to be back to normal. And to a man, our teachers are saying this is a much more difficult year. And to be honest, the Department of Education at the state level has tied our hands as to how much supports that we can provide. I can't say enough about the teachers. They've gone over and above for the students who are at home. But if they are home and they're sick, then yes, they aren't going to be able to do their work at home. And we've not been able to provide as much support at home as we were allowed to do last year. So there's been a lot of disruptions this year. Kyle, I'm just going to have you go to that last slide for me, please. I feel like I'm talking to the Wizard of Oz. Where exactly?
Where's Kyle?
Kyle.
He said remote. Cuba.
Yeah.
Where?
He went backwards.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kyle, what I meant, could you go to the last slide of the presentation? So I've really already talked about those. It does bear repeating that there have been some considerations. Steve and I were talking about this today, and I was going to call this the roadblock page, but it really is the bumps in the road because there have been no real roadblocks. But the idea that we were not stable this fall, and through no fault of our own, we did the protocol shuffle, and we listened to the state, and we listened to the departments of public health, and they listened to whomever they needed to listen to. But we have had issues. The test and stay was a much better product and protocol for us. We had a lot more of our students in place. The attendance that you've all been talking about, I believe 4 years worth of data for attendance. So right now at our district, this is a district number, 34% of our students are chronically absent, which means that they've missed 10% or more of their days in membership. That's this year. That's last year, it was 23%. We were hitting the mark in 2020 and 2019. Those are wonderful numbers, 14% for urban districts. So when we weren't in the midst of a pandemic, the schools, just as the principals had said, were paying very close attendance and attention. Students were coming to school, and that whole thing about success is 90% of showing up. It really bears out that we need to have our students in school in front of those great teachers that we have.
So we delayed the question, which was, so what are people given for answers? Like what's the issue coming in COVID and kind of cultural beliefs?
A good portion of that was from November, December, and January, and having students who had to quarantine or students who were sick and they were out for, at the elementary level, 10 days at a time because of the protocol that we were provided. And so the biggest piece of that 34% was from the pandemic issues.
So there should be an asterisk. They weren't being absent because they were just wanted to go out and look at the sun. They were absent because they were sick. So shouldn't there be an asterisk? Am I wrong?
Just outright scared.
Well, that goes to my question that I asked the superintendent earlier about what the state was doing. If districts like across the state have numbers like that,
but there's no asterisks.
Well, we are keeping track.
I don't think just putting an asterisk on the slide is going to change it.
No, but
I'm
at least it will show, because this way it shows, my goodness, they're not going to school at all. But she just said the reason why they weren't in school because they were quarantined.
So in our database, it is calculated. So if you're out due to COVID, we have a COVID line, but it's still absent.
The state's not looking for a COVID.
Right,
No,
and education, they're not in school. So we, in court systems, children are either in front of us or not, and they don't care either way.
Well, I think they're a little
So there's
afraid
a lot
to ease the standards on anything, because as you saw the time when somebody said they were going to bomb the schools, everybody stayed home. Kids are always looking for the opportunity, as long as we've all been around. to say, hey, I really like to go to school today, but there's somewhat of a threat. So the opportunity, I think, if the state lowers this thing at this point, maybe at the end, but now people can be like, you know what, even the state understands that kids aren't expected to go to school with it. So they're not going to change that. If anything, they'll put it back on us and say, what do you want to do locally, right? But I doubt that's going to happen.
I'm very optimistic that when we can get ourselves to a place that's more stable, we're going to go right back to that 2020, 2019 number. And that our Leominster students are going to be in school. So, Brandon, they are actually, the state has applied for a waiver for some accountability to the federal government. You know, the money that falls down. So they have not heard yet. We may very well hear in the spring that some of the accountability components that are part of the system for Massachusetts will be waived for this year.
So what I hear in summary here is, it sounds like everybody's doing everything. They get the diagnostic piece, people responding to it, that part's good. The other part is, I think, where I last left off before the pandemic, which was students are going to learn differently, that we're going to need technology. Now, online learning isn't what we just saw for the last 2 years. That's not. That wasn't even a fair chance. But you can see here where even the diagnostic tools that we use, that you can learn anywhere at any time. And so now we've got to take the good parts. We've got to extract the good parts of what came out from distance learning or on. I mean, let's face it, the colleges, every college is pretty much given up at this point. Everybody, you can get 87 degrees in 4 months at this point from Harvard and every college in the entire universe online. So I'm not saying we're going to go online. From this, what I see is many more options. Like you have more options for diagnostic. I think the good part of what's going to happen is teachers are going to have more tools. They're probably going to be interfaced with technology somewhere along the line, but they're going to have more tools. So when you get that diagnostic, you're going to be able to plug another tool into that specifically helps that student. I would suspect that's the good part. The bad part is we've got a whole lot of people that we've got to catch up, and I'm sure that's system-wide. I mean, that's in a gateway city or urban community. So it's going to be a little tougher than normal, but as long as we know where we need to be and we've got the resources to get them there, it's hard. The older students get, it's harder to get them to catch up. Their interests move in directions. There's all kinds of things happen first. So you can see it in the data, and it's pretty clear.
But they all need a strong foundation.
Yes.
That's the important thing.
Yes. And I fear for the 22 results. I mean, hopefully the next results are better because you're not going to be able to catch up. Not even summer school. I mean, you can do all of that, but
yeah, I think we are a little concerned about the MCAS assessment this year because of the disruptions that we've had. So I'm looking for 2023. I'll be honest.
Maybe that's the caveat of the Carnegie Bank. You tell the students, once you can pass one subject matter, and you passed it at 10th grade or wherever it is, you passed it. It doesn't all have to be done, in May or June. I think that's part of the hassle. Is there's so much emphasis on passing that MCAS that sometimes it just adds anxiety to anxiety. Josh.
That's it. I just had one question. It might be more for Paula. Based upon all this data that we've heard and the strong viewpoint that these kids need to be in person, they just need to be in person, is there any discussion at higher level, state level, that some of these things that we did maybe weren't, and a lot of these were just rules that we followed, right? And we're moving different things to try. Is there any discussion to kind of memorialize what worked and what didn't so that we never repeat them again? I mean, the data, if it's statewide, if the data statewide shows what Leominster shows, I mean, there should be some way of telling us hopefully not to go down this path again.
Right. So we're following this year. Our state has what's called the accelerated roadmap, where there has been a ton of research over what did not work. Mathematics nationally, kids were killed on trying to do mathematics the way it was. So in Massachusetts, we are following the accelerated roadmap, which doesn't mean we go faster. That means we have to identify, we have to assess like we are. We're assessing all the time, taking students from where they're at and then moving forward. The big piece is really around getting these curricular products in place that are strong, that are quality, that are evidence-based, and then making sure that teachers are ready to push that out at grade level. So we've got both of those going on simultaneously right now. We are getting the curriculums in place, and we're doing the professional development with staff. It's a lot. And it's not a one-year fix. This is, we rolled out a few curriculums this year. Next year, we're at the high school, middle school again. And then we go back and we look at our elementaries. We put a ton of money in the FY23 into professional development, consultants, bringing people in to help us. Because it's really about that practice and
kind of follow up on something that was brought up before, and actually has been brought up now, is the parents' involvement and what we're going to do to get them more involved in teaching them or whatever the case might be. Because they could be going to school, be going home from school, going logging in, but they have no idea, they have nobody else to ask. How do I get past this? The parents have no idea what they're talking about.
I love hearing the new math thing. Most parents hate the new math.
Yeah.
It's
But
crap.
I guess,
Yeah.
but I guess, we want to give them all the tools to succeed, but when they get home and there's nobody at home that knows how to do it, what are we doing to help them at home when they get home to do this? And to your point, they're quarantining at home for 10 days doing this, but then they have no, and they could be people to reach out to, but what are we doing at home help?
So students that have been home, we have hired tutors just to make sure that there's at least a minimum of that interface when students get stuck. This year, we really hope to get the after-school programs going. Transportation just could not happen. But it's not something that we want to give up on. Parents need us that before and after school to cover this, because when children get home, a lot of parents either they're exhausted, right? Their days are busy. They don't understand which way the classroom is taught it. I don't know if you've had the experience, but children will say to you, don't do it that way. That's not the way the teacher wants me to do it, right?
Yeah.
All the time. So that witchcraft that we talk about. So if we can help students right after school while they're so fresh, we do a really nice job with the after school programs. There's always an enrichment piece, there's an academic piece. We do a lot of that mental health and the socialization in there. So we really got to get the transportation fixed.
What you must get all the same stuff I get every day. Mounds of new software
We've got
that everyone wants to sell us, that these students who are falling behind use, they can take on vacation, they can take it home with them, weekends, whatever, they make them fun. They almost trick kids into learning. I mean, that's got to be overwhelming to decide which of those products that you're going to use and whether or not, what the license fees are on some of those. But I do see that as where learning partly is good. There's nothing that's going to beat a good teacher and a good instructor in a classroom, in a log, in a chair, whatever it might be. But it's the the learning technology. We haven't really seen that. We're in the diagnostic, but the learning part, which is universal, you can take with you, on your phone or wherever it may be, is really the next level of this. Is what I see. I mean, it's. I went to a meeting many years ago where the lecturer said, you won't have a home phone, you won't have this, you won't have, it'll all be, have one phone number, it'll all be on here. And I said, you're out of your mind. Here we are, everything, music, any pictures, our whole life. The window into our life is on our phone. But that's going to be the next step of this, right?
One thing the state has done for us that has been helpful is to spend their time doing research on these products.
Right.
So they have a portal, it's called Curate, and they're looking at software programs, they're looking at actual curriculum products, and they're providing us ratings on these. Because you're right, it would take,
it's overwhelming.
Steve's looking at them all the time. We're looking at them, teachers bring them to us. And so that's one thing, the state does have a portal to help us sift through some of these products that are out there.
You know what I heard? I don't know if it's common denominator or anything, but I think it's brilliant. When I talk to students, the one thing they learned, but the one thing that seems to be common is they self-taught themselves music. They self-taught themselves how to play the piano or a guitar or the kazoo or something. But there goes to show the motivation that there's something there that they had interest in. I couldn't self-teach myself music, but they did. And you see the passion, they picked up on something they were interested in, and they use technology to help them to be able to do that, right? So it's what games do. They trick you into something, right? Why do people stay up all night, right? If we can adapt that, the kids that slide at Francis Drake, they've even built jumps and everything. They were up there from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. If we could apply that to
a particular piece of software or math or in the classroom, all these kids are geniuses. So I see that as the next level, is those pieces of software to help the teacher enhance, right?
I think we want to give our students a lot of credit for last year, even though they weren't as successful as we would have liked. We've had conversations for years about how do we get them from the YouTube and the iTunes to actually using their technology as a tool for learning. And what they did last year was just that. Those children didn't know what a Google Classroom was. They didn't know how to attach their work or put it into a folder or go into that folder. So they've learned many tools, at least as far as efficiency, and they would put us as the adult users trying to be efficient to shame. So they did learn a lot, and they really did use it as a tool for learning.
Well, YouTube needs to move to that area of saying we need to help teachers now, right? We need to help educate America and the world.
They do. They have YouTube Kids.
Yeah, no, I
yes.
Yeah.
And you know,
but there's
probably you can learn even if you don't want to learn.
There's an app that the elementary schools use, Footstep for Brilliance.
Yes. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter can't wait to use it. She has no clue she's learning.
It's fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you know, to Lorraine's point, statement about success. Aren't we handicapping ourselves by labeling what success is? Because success to you, Lorraine, could be different from what success looks like to me, or to Dean, or Eileen, or Melissa. It's different for everyone. Good, bad, or indifferent.
So there are more knowing others than myself that have put together the national set of standards for all of our content areas. And they basically are saying that for ELA and mathematics, to be successful at the next level, our students should have this as a bare minimum. So we're the same thing with the next generation science standards. So we are using that information from, as I said, those people that know a whole lot more than I do, even though I think I know that. So that's where we're basing our success. Hopefully MCAS is going to come along and be more of a true predictor of it. I don't know that it is. I think the standards themselves are more a predictor of how successful our kids will be.
But my son was the first class to pass the MCAS. I knew he was going to have to pass it. So 2.5 years leading up to it, that's all I kept telling him, this whole MCAS thing. And he passed it the first time. Then he thought it was early graduation. He thought he was going to be, they were going to start bidding on him to come to their college at that point, and he could take the next 2 years off, the next 1.5 years off. But that's not uncommon at all. That's what happens. But remember, Ron, a lot of what happens in education is driven by the workforce, by people who are lobbyists who are saying we need to fill those jobs down here at Devon's and all the life science jobs. We've got to fill it. So they weigh in on the curriculum, which later is the curriculum that we have to meet for science. In reality, you're right. Success is a whole lot of things, right? There are a lot of hardworking people that I deem successful that don't have a college degree, but they learn the skills that they need so that when they do get into the workforce, the church, or the community, it helps them to be successful, whatever they choose to do. And that could mean, getting off the grid and heading up to the border of Canada and Maine. But
I just think that sometimes
that's fine, but you need skills.
I just think that sometimes we handicap ourselves by following the definition of success embedded upon us by someone else.
Oh yeah. Well, welcome to the
world. No, I'm not trying to be cute, but
I didn't want to eat potato buds. I wanted real potatoes, but somehow or another, corporate America convinced all of us that we could have real potatoes that were flakes. All we had to do was add water and take a minute. You're right, but I didn't make the rules. They make them, right?
You like potato buds?
One question I had is, we started on an experimental program kind of with students, and they had an online, it was the courses online, and I forget what the name of the program was, but was that discontinued? Are we still doing that?
No, we're still doing that. Virtual high school?
Yes, virtual high school.
We're still doing that, and in fact, the state
was it any help?
Pardon me?
Was it helped through the pandemic?
Yes, and so many of our students who can't fit an AP or an honors level course into their schedule for whatever reason, they're doing that. They're doing it virtually. The state has pushed out a number of honors and AP science courses, and Leominster has signed up, so they are in our program of studies for the students for next year. So it really does provide the students with a flexible way to get all the classes they want.
Does it cost?
Oh, sure, there's all of them. Right, this year especially, they're promoting some new science.
Is it unlimited? I remember we had it, it was like experimental, so only so many students would participate. Is it open-ended now at 11th, 12th grade?
So we need to provide support.
Yeah.
Right now we have the students who are taking it, we provide them with a teacher to help them, to oversee, to make the independent study not quite so independent.
Right.
And depending on the number of students who actually would need or would sign up for it, we might need to add a section for like one teacher class period. So it's really up to us to just add that support.
But it worked though, I mean, it's pretty successful.
Yes.
And students are interested in continuing.
Does it cost something? No, yes?
It doesn't cost anything to the student, and we just, as the district, need to support. There's a small subscription fee, but we need to support the programming with a teacher.
Right. Yeah. Good. How many students roughly? I mean,
I don't have that in my head.
I think there were like maybe 10 or 20.
I would say up to 20, and we're hoping to grow that with the science offerings.
Now those 20, and then I'm going to stop. Are those 20 that you're talking about? That's just in one subject, or is it multiple subjects?
Multiple.
Are they considered C people, meaning that if they succeed, you get other do it in some other subjects?
Voluntary.
It's really a great way for us to provide low incident offerings. So if a child wants AP German, and there's one student at our school that wants that, we wouldn't be able to provide that because we would have to take a teacher to teach that. So instead, that child can get that coursework online, and then another child can get AP oceanography, which we don't offer. So the low incident courses that children may be interested in, but we don't have the capacity to have a full section of.
And then that
that's where we can
precipitates
use
them
it.
being able to go to whatever college
Yes.
they're looking for,
Right.
that would specialize in that particular subject.
Certainly.
Okay. Thank you. That was a
Yes.
lot of good information tonight.
Yes, thank
Very
you.
helpful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Get back to school, kids. That's it. It's
Yes.
important. And you're right, it is before and after school programs, it's plays, music, all of those things, they take students to come, but maybe they aren't thrilled about what's going on in the moment. So, we're having a hard time finding lifeguards. Anybody here a lifeguard? We'll pay you pretty well. Lifeguard for us this summer, but summer is important for us as well because we have so many different programs in addition to the schools. And that's what keeps retention, right? I mean, that's what helps them stay focused. And we're having a hard time finding anybody at this point to work for the summer programs, even though we're increasing the, all right. What's that? Well, you get down here, we'll pay you like $4 an hour, all the chips you can take. Well, let's go. It's time. Lifeguards are us. It's not a business.
I don't have the best seat.
All right, good. That's a lot of good information. Thank you to everybody tonight for helping us out. We're going to now move on to student representative. So here's what happened, and correct me if I'm incorrect. So what we passed is in conflict with what the state has as a law, right? They passed the law, and it's very specific about what you can and can't do, or mostly what you can do. What we passed conflicts with that. So if we want to keep what we did, then we've got to do this whole home rule petition and get it through the legislature and all. So I wasn't sure what the intentions were,
whether we just ought to just stay with, stay with the state model, or do you want to, in other words, maybe stay with it now and see whether or not other school districts start to come up with something different, or we put it on for the next school, the next school committee, forum that we have with other school committees to see if they want to change it. But this is painful to not move forward. What do you think, Brandon?
So my biggest concern was when we made this vote, whatever, at the end of last term, was that something would be in place by the next school year. And that's clearly no longer going to happen with the home rule petition process. One of the things that Attorney Riley pointed out in the opinion that the mayor's office got from the city solicitor was that, and it goes to one of the concerns that previous committee had, was about equity and making sure the 3 different high schools had some sort of representation. And it looks like through his opinion, we could still make it so that 2 kids from LHS, 2 from CTEI, and 1 from LCE are what makes up the high school. Yeah. So I would make a motion that we move forward with the state, the current state law, and kind of just make that caveat that we have children in high school, CTE.
All right. So noted. Second by Greg and Eileen. Any other questions? It seems to be straightforward. All in favor? Signify in the usual manner. Those opposed? Okay, thank you. And now we'll move to Massachusetts School Building Assistance Authority invitation to eligibility for Fallbrook School. They sent us a letter.
Jeff touched on it.
Did everybody get a letter?
Yes.
You know what it means? It means we're been inducted into the system.
Yes.
And now we'll work with our collective school city people to go through the building and come back with some recommendations.
And our first homework assignment is done and turned in. We're at the top of the list. So each month we'll bring you back a report and any communications that we receive from them. Really exciting time. Fallbrook is a buzz right now. So we're thrilled. We were selected. There were 58 applications. 17 were chosen. So that's well very good news. Christine,
nice job, Chris. Thanks, Chris.
She wrote that up.
Paula, what does it mean to be on the top?
So we already have a lot of things in place. So everybody has a project manager. So each one of the projects starts at a different time. We're first on our project manager's list. Our ducks are in a row. We don't have to go out for any certain votes and look for all of this stuff. So they're ready to move forward with us right in April. So they've got us on a trajectory for 270 days. There's a lot of work to be done. So the first letter came out. Dean signed it. I signed it. Chris has already sent it back. Done. They gave us 30 days to do it. We did it in 2. So our next project is to put a committee together. And Jeff is already starting to work on those pieces right now. So you'll hear about it. We're going to be moving very quickly.
And typically there's someone from the school committee on that, so I don't know who's in Fallbrook district, but that would,
right.
I mean, I don't know whether you want to or not, but you might have a vested interest.
Jeff will be reaching out to people to see who wants to be on. So this is just great news.
Yeah.
It's great news.
Very exciting. All right, so we're going to now move on to approval of the minutes. February 23rd. Anybody had a chance to look at them?
I make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Eileen and a second by Melissa. Are there any questions, comments, errors, or omissions? If not, all in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. Now move on to finance update. Approval of the warrants. Here she is.
Hiding in the back. Please.
How are we doing?
I'm doing well. We're here this evening.
Good. Just please tell us that our gas and all our utility rates are locked in until we get 2041.
Listen, if I could lock my own personal gas rates in, I would. Everything is up. Our paper went from $24.99 to $42.99.
Oh my God.
That's why we're just not going
So it's an additional $30,000 this year above and beyond what we anticipated. For paper. I said, let's just use the Chromebooks. Don't worry about paper. Let's get paper.
What aggravates me, some people are going up just because they can. There's no need. There's nothing going on.
Well, we price them out, and you know, WB Mason was the lowest at $42.99. Yeah, that was a fun fact today.
Get a lot of those fun facts every day. So why don't we have you do the warrants? Does anybody have any questions or concern on those? And
No, where's our finance committee if you want to make a recommendation on warrants? And then we can get basic overall view of that.
Alrighty, I'll make a motion that we approve the following warrants. First, warrant 32 totaling $226,290.98. Warrant 33 totaling $2,499,556.72. Warrant 34 totaling $338,294.05. And warrant 35 totaling $2,629,830.78 from the grants and revolving. Warrant number 32 totaling $59,065.70. Warrant 33 totaling $365,208.14. Warrant 34 totaling $359,759.06. And warrant 35 totaling $269,991.78.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Mr. Ron. Any questions about the warrants at all? You've had a chance to review them all? It makes sense to you? Okay, all in favor? Those opposed? Okay, now?
just a few
Yes.
updates. So as of March 1st, our general fund expense line has $663,821 available. The general fund salary line has $403,950 available, totaling $1,067,771 available in the general fund for the remaining of the school year. As we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, we're watching our tuition expense line, as always, and our insurance program line. The majority, if not all, of our current overages that you see on these expense lines will be covered by general fund lines with transfers. As we get down into May and June, we'll do those transfers to clean that stuff up. But it does look like we are going to have the majority of our insurance covered by the general fund, which is fantastic because we are again allowed to carry forward our school choice, giving us a nice, healthy balance in our school choice moving forward, which could be essential in our Fallbrook program. So,
you know, I was just going to suggest, and that's totally up to you and the superintendent, but it seems as though these, you know, our Zoom meetings offer another extension to the community. I don't know if you don't always want to come to these meetings, but they are helpful to have you either online or, you know, either Zoom or here, and to get an update every meeting, just so, especially as we approach the end of the year, keeps us focused.
Sure.
Totally up to you. I mean,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I know you enjoy.
Sometimes it's entertainment.
I see. Most people thought that this was just a meeting.
I
They
know.
didn't know we tricked them into educating.
Exactly.
We tricked them into watching.
You tricked me into learning.
Yeah,
There
actually,
goes
the
Jeopardy.
Wi-Fi is terrible.
There goes Jeopardy.
Yes, my Wi-Fi is
Ratings
horrible.
are
We have to
down.
get Kyle on that. Sorry.
See the fun you have?
I see.
So even with increases that you're getting and things that we're not locked in
Yeah,
on prices.
we've got some
they're okay.
savings in other areas that are assisting in covering. And as a matter of fact, I was going to just let everybody know that the district has finally found a passenger van. One.
We wanted 5,
But we're gonna keep working on getting more. But we have secured one van at the cost of $47,000. I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Solar power.
yeah.
I'm Solar just asking, panel. guys.
I mean, the big push is going towards.
You can't get them run.
We
could barely find a gas powered.
See, the Amish had this thing figured out.
Right. If you would like
Do not
horses,
depend. Do
you
not
can put horses
depend
in the town
on
hall, that's
technology.
fine. But we did secure one van and we are going to pick that up this week. And we are looking for another 5 brand new vans that will be covered.
Passenger seats in them, right?
15
Okay.
passenger vans.
All right.
Yeah, will help the district tremendously, especially with all of the transportation issues that
They
we're
have
having.
seat belts?
Yes, these do.
Yeah.
These ones do.
These are like those limousine vans you see. No,
They're comfy.
Any hybrid?
What's that?
Any? Sorry, any hybrid?
You can only find one.
I know, but gas powered. I'm just.
They're just tough to find. That's all.
It's
If I could
coming,
find
Ron.
it,
It's
if
coming.
we could get 5 at once, it would make my
It's
life
not.
easier.
But this day and age, you can't find They the have product. hybrids on TV all day long. You get tired of hearing about hybrids. Right. They're like horseshoes, they're all sunk to the bottom of the ocean. All right.
It might be.
On the what? Oh, we're gonna get to the, well, we can look, you wanna look at the slide on.
Jim, would you know that? How many open
Enrollment.
positions? No, I can get that back. All right.
Okay, we are now gonna move on to policy. Anything on policy?
Yes, we
All right.
had
Eileen?
our meeting tonight, and we reviewed the face covering policy CFA. And this, we would like to do the first reading. We did make a change to the very last sentence. It says any individual is permitted to wear, and we added an approved mask or face covering in a proper manner while present in any school building, facility, or other area of the school campus.
All right.
So we just added that. So you're
So
going to
then-
make a motion to approve it.
All right, motion, is there a second? Second by Greg, Ron, and Melissa. So I guess it's a popular.
All of us.
All right, all in favor? Those opposed? Thank you. Now move on to action items, approval of the mask policy, which we did. And now we're gonna do new and old business, HR report. We're gonna get an update on that, just an email.
Yeah, it's
That's
just
fine.
it's just a list of makeup.
Yep. Enrollment reports in the slide. Safety report, I just asked for the numbers.
Right.
Just kind of, getting a read on some things. I know part of the plan is to update some of the cameras.
Yeah, we have one big bid out there right now, 200 cameras at the high school for approximately.
The ridership I asked to be entered in here, just so you could look at it and see, who's using it, right? It's an expense, it's a huge expense to provide transportation. Is anybody using it? Sometimes if you look on Day Street at 3 in the afternoon, you wonder if anybody's on the bus, right? And then the fees report, anybody have anything on the fees report? Okay, anything on the new or old business? I just like to thank all of the teachers and schools and everybody for the art show at City Hall. Kids were amazing. I know there's a talent I have out there. I just haven't identified it yet. I'm not giving up. But some of these students, they are confident. They speak so well. They're enthusiastic. They're supportive of their teachers. They give their credit to the teachers. They were people coming in all day, City Hall. Even the art show was Thursday night. Not everybody can make it, but Friday people were in, and first thing Monday and this morning people have been coming. So till the 10th. So if people can still make it, it closes out on the 10th. They'll start taking it down. So good job to students. Are really good. If you get a chance, you haven't had a chance. Still check it out. These kids are amazing. And the world is theirs, right? Anything on the new or old business? Nothing else? Boy. we wore you out. All right, motion to adjourn. All in favor?